Everybody, please take your seats. It's about time we get started. Please make sure your cell phones are either turned off or put on mute for the distraction. This is the Senate Natural Resource Committee of October the 18th, 2023. I'm Chairman Bob Hinskins. Madam Secretary, would you call roll?
Chairman Hinskins?
Here.
Here. Vice Chairman Fazy?
Here.
Here. Senator Allen? Senator Connick? Here. Senator Hewitt? Senator Kleinpeter? Here. Senator Lambert? Here. 5 members are present.
Thank you very much. We have a quorum. For the audience and those here to speak today, we're using the red cards and the green cards like we usually do on a bill. So if you are for one of these rules, please put in a green card. If you are in opposition for one of these rules, please put in a red card. We will be taking the Capital Area Groundwater Conservation Committee up first to explain both oversight on LARS 49-966D and 49-466D1B. If y'all could come to the committee to the table and just introduce yourself and give us your justification for what we did.
Thank you, Senators. My name is Gary Beard. I'm the Executive Director of Capital Area Groundwater Conservation District. I appreciate your time. I had a PowerPoint to go through it real quick so that you might, Senator, as you mentioned earlier, it's our first time here, so I want to go through the rationale, what's going on, and then lay out the two rules that we're under discussion today for your action.
Go ahead and proceed, Mr. Beard.
Thank you, sir. First of all, the Capital Area Groundwater Conservation District and the Commission was assigned almost 50 years ago the authority over the Southern Hills Aquifer. The Southern Hills Aquifer is a series of sheets of sand that exist underneath the toe of the boot of Louisiana, where in the capital area, which is 6 parishes only, even though the aquifer that you see covers the entire toe of the boot, we only have jurisdiction over East and West Baton Rouge, Ascension, East and West Feliciana, and Point Capee. This aquifer, however, goes all the way up to Jackson, Mississippi. So it is a massive underground system of varying stratas of sand that begin in Jackson and go all the way up underneath us toward the Gulf of Mexico. Now, this is Death Valley, of course. We regulate the water coming out of the ground. The self-reported numbers is 52 billion, with a B, gallons of water removed from this aquifer in just this area, self-reported, not including agriculture. We have no authority over agriculture, horticulture, or irrigation. 52 billion gallons. That fills up Tiger Stadium, the bowl, every day, day and a half, without agriculture. It's a massive amount of water. The next thing I want to talk to you about is time, not our stopwatch time, geologic time. On those stratas that we drink out of, 2,000 years ago, it began. From 2,000 to 4,000 years is when that water started its migration. So at the time of Pax Romana, at the time of the birth of our Savior Jesus Christ, rain began to fall in Jackson, Mississippi. 2,000 years later, that water is now under our feet. That's why it's so good. It took that long to move through that sand to be purified. It is a natural resource that belongs to the people of Louisiana. That's what we're here to protect. It's the water belonging to the people, not to for-profit companies, not to anyone but the people. Our job, under the rules established, under the law established by the legislature, is to do all things necessary, that's a quote, all things necessary to protect that drinking water supply. Now, if you look under our feet in Baton Rouge, you'll see there's varying layers of sand that go underneath us. And we pull from varying layers all the way down to 2,400 feet, roughly. Well, that was something there, and it was important. But we'll go on. There's 2 fault lines that exist in Baton Rouge. The southern fault, the purple line, is the Baton Rouge fault. The green line is what's called the Scotlandville-Denham Springs fault. So there's 2 fissures, 2 sections that it divides between those 2 fault lines. If you look at that fault line, the sands in underground have either shifted completely or they still touch. That happened decades ago. Where they still touch, the salts, shown by the red, have gone across that fault line and are now moving northward. So you see where, in this illustration, where the yellow band touches, the salt water, when they still touch at that fault line, as we suck water out, the more water we suck, the greater it's moving forward. Like I said, 52 billion gallons is taken out of the ground every year based on self-reporting. Where it's not touching, the salts can't go any further north. So this was done 10 years ago. 10 years ago, that's that southern fault line. There's the 1,200 foot, and now we're redoing the figures today. USGS is redoing it, and it's moved that the right side where you see the green is now changed color, and it's moving northward in that area. This is the salt water in 1,500 feet, and it's moving right toward the major production wells at Lula Street. In the 2,000 foot, heading downtown toward Exxon in that direction. 2,400 foot is just now starting, moving northward also toward downtown. And this is the 2,800 foot. It goes all the way across. The dam broke and it's moving all the way across north. This is 10 years old. If you did it today, we had LSU and USGS come to our office. It's further north than all of those have shown. So what are we going to do? To meet that goal, what do we do? Well, we're going to continue working with engineers and scientists because, gentlemen, if we don't have good science and good engineering, we could make the wrong decision, and we don't want to do that anymore. It's too precious a commodity. So the Capital Area Groundwater District entered into a contract with the Water Institute of the Gulf and LSU, and what they're doing is they're building a three-dimensional model of that entire aquifer system. And what they're doing is plotting where the salts are, and as we put new wells in and we extract more water from the ground, what happens to the salts? How does it migrate? How much of our aquifer do we lose? So their engineers also, and with USGS, are also coming up with engineering and scientific solutions for us of what we can do to implement a strategic plan to stop the salts from moving northward. They've also recommended additional constituent testing so that we keep up with what's going on. Part of their analysis is connector wells, pressure systems, building high-pressure water plumes underground, reclaimed water facilities so that we can take reclaimed water for irrigation and for cooling towers and other things that we can do to stop using drinking water to meet those kind of needs. And also to look at aquifer recharge. Up in the toe of the boot at the northern end, can we build more recharge areas to help repressurize and provide more water into the aquifer? That's another wonderful slide, and it's important too. So what we did is we implemented an automated metering and well monitoring system. So the independent remote monitoring system, LSU and the Water Institute of the Gulf, Dr. Alyssa Dawson, PhD, the chief scientist, came to us and told us in 2 meetings, we need data to build this extensive groundwater three-dimensional model. We need good data. We need data every hour of every day. We want your meters to do that, do that for us. In 2019, the year before I joined, the legislative auditor issued a scathing report of the district. One of the things they said was, quote, the commission should consider using its authority in state law to require all wells regulated by the commission to be metered for recording withdrawal amounts. The board took that to heart, and the board went and investigated all the different options. And if you look and you see on that little picture, those are the 2 things that are connected to the pipe. That's the only thing that's connected. It's not intrusive. It sits on the outside of the pipe itself. And this is the box that goes alongside of it. So what this remote metering and monitoring system would do is that it would eliminate the method of self-reporting. So for decades, what happened was industries, private companies, everybody, every quarter would simply write us an email or send a note and say, this is how much water we used. And that's all we had. Excuse me. Currently, we went and did a field investigation, and we found that only a fraction of the wells in each strata. Remember, the LSU said we need to know not just how much is coming out of a well field, we need to know how much is coming out of every strata every hour so we can predict the effects of the salts as they migrate northward. We found that meters are broken, non-existent, not calibrated since the 1960s when they were first installed, some of them underwater. So we knew that what was going on in the field was not reliable. We could not base scientific data, and they told us that. You need something else. So we moved forward because the law allowed us to do that. We moved forward to install 320 wells within the district and 10 chloride monitoring stations in water production areas to track the saltwater plume in the aquifer. We moved forward with that 2 years ago under a cooperative endeavor agreement and started the process of moving forward to do independent metering on these wells. We also moved forward to put 23 monitoring wells along the southern fault line. And I appreciate y'all's support because capital outlay has provided us funding to be able to go in and put these monitoring wells along the fault. And the purpose is, one of the purposes is not just to find out the level of salts coming across, but how big is that window in that fault line so we can do something perhaps to hinder the salts from moving forward. Today, this is a snapshot from yesterday. Just so you know, all the wells, all the equipment that we talked about, the 300 plus, have been engineered, fabricated, manufactured, assembled, and delivered to Baton Rouge already. And over half of these meters have already been installed. And here's the neat thing about those meters. First of all, they're highly accurate. They meet the AWWA specification that is within 2% accuracy, meets the spec for 2% accuracy. But here's the neat thing. If I go into a field and I go check a meter and it's broken or it's off, I don't know that until I get out in the field. With this system, if you notice the red ones send us a signal and say something went wrong, something happened. So we send the crew out to go investigate what's going on at that particular site so that we know every day, every hour of every day, how much water is coming out of every one of those wells. The gray ones are the ones yet to be installed, but the meters are already delivered. All the equipment is fabricated, delivered, and ready for installation. So what's our goals? The other goal, of course, is to maximize additional funding sources. So you will be seeing me again, thank you very much, in this next session to continue our capital outlay program to install those monitoring wells along that fault line. And of course, we're seeking federal assistance, if at all possible, to get some federal money to assist us in that regard. Now let's talk about the existing law and rules. In 2022, I came before this committee, and we unanimously passed in both committees and in both chambers, unanimously passed new legislation, and it said that the new legislation passed to allow the Board of Commissioners to recover project costs, in other words, capital, O&M, ongoing, which, quote, may include specific systems and technologies to allow for remote monitoring of flows, water levels, water quality, and other parameters considered necessary by the board to conserve and protect our groundwater resources. We passed that through committee, and that is now in current law. Also in 2022, we came before this committee. We went and promulgated rules. This committee did not act upon it. And this is a quote, this is the existing rule. That's what's in rule today. In rule today, it says the commission shall have the authority to install an independent remote monitoring system on a well owner's property for the purpose of ensuring an accurate measurement of the total yield of each well and monitor the extent of chlorides in the aquifer to prevent a waste of groundwater resources and to prevent or alleviate damaging or potentially damaging subsidence of the land surface caused by the withdrawal of groundwater within the district. That is in current rule. That exists today. That's the rule we're operating under with all those wells that you saw us and all the meters that are already installed. It's under this part of the rule. So what does the proposed rule, Senator, and I'm sorry, that was a long way to going around.
Getting there.
Okay. what does the current rule do? Well, if you looked at the current rule, I told you what it said, what we had the authority to do. However, if you looked at it, it says two things. It says that the owner shall include metering of different ways of metering it. Okay, just like it said for decades. It was never taken out. So when we put in the other rule says the district shall put it in. So we came back and said, well, wait a minute, no reason to have duality. If you want to put it in, you may. You can put it in if you want, but you don't have to. You don't have to, have that kind of cost. The district's already put them in, and we're finishing putting them in right now. So what we're doing in this new rule is saying you don't have to. We take that part out, and we clarify what it means. So in other words, if we go into the field and we put a meter in, 6 months, 9 months from now, we'll go back and we'll check it, and we'll make sure. But all the energy, all the O&M, all the cost are borne by the district, not the owner. We bear the cost of that. That's all in our rate structure that was approved. So the other thing is that we had an instance where we had a well owner, Little St. John Church, little bit of flow. It didn't require a massive metering system for that little bit of flow. So we said, well, we can put in a different type metering system for them and allow that to go that way. And that was what this rule did. So instead of spending the money for an excessive metering system, we have a little manual system that we could put on their system to save money. That's what that's about. All the systems that are going in that we're proposing have been vetted, they've been analyzed, and it's a high quality, high integrity system. And we're pleased with the results of it. We've even compared that to the wells in Gonzales, by the way, and they were within a half of 1% of a newly installed meter. So we're confident on the quality of the data that we're getting out, and so is LSU and the Water Institute of the Gulf for their model. Chapter 9. Chapter 9 is about the permit. Gentlemen, if you go out and you build a building, and the parish or the city gives you permit to build, and then they give you a occupancy permit, right? So in other words, when somebody goes out and builds a well, and they tell us, look, we're going to go down to 1,000 feet, it's 1,000 GPM, and it's 10 foot of screen, and we give them a permit for that. Currently, I've got no way of knowing, did they? Is it 1,000 feet, or was it 1,200? Was it a 1,000 GPM pump? Or did the contractor get a break and got a bigger pump for a cheaper price and put a 1,200 GPM pump in? I have no idea. So what we were doing is changing the rules and saying it's a bifold rule of permission. When they tell us a certain GPM and a certain depth and a certain screen, we will go and have it analyzed. We have it analyzed by USGS, not only our staff to verify, USGS and an independent expert and the Water Institute of the Gulf and LSU will analyze what they're saying and how is it affecting the aquifer, the saltwater plume. Once that's done, we have to bear that cost. We don't pass that on to them. So in that two-part process, we say go ahead and do it. And once it's constructed, before our meter is turned on, we will go in the field, get the as-built drawings, and we'll verify that what they said they were going to build, they actually built. And to make sure that it's correct so that so that what approval was given by the board still stands. And then once that's proven, immediately we can turn the meter on and can go on, and the second part of the permit falls into place. The third part of it is the allowed fee. When I came to y'all 2 years ago, we put a fee, and we said the language said up to $2,000. Gentlemen, $2,000 barely covers, in fact, it doesn't even cover our internal cost. It certainly doesn't cover LSU, the experts in the Water Institute of the Gulf, and USGS. So we bear that. But since the legislature allowed us to charge up to $2,000, the board voted to pass on the $2,000 to every well permittee that comes in. And there's only about 6 or 8 a year on average. It's not a lot. But it does help us offset our cost. That's what these rule modifications do, and that's all they do. So with that in mind, I can yield the table to other speakers and come back later and answer any questions or however you want to do it, Mr. Chairman.
Does anyone have questions for Gary at the moment? Senator Lambert's trying to find his button. Senator Lambert with a question.
All right, Mr. Beard, how much are these meters going to cost?
We have already purchased, well, we have a cooperative endeavor agreement. The private company has already purchased them. A couple of years ago, when the new rate structure was passed, the district currently charges $65 for every million gallons of water to the well owner that comes out of the ground. To a household, maybe that equates to about 10 cents a month. That fee is already in place. That fee already covers everything. So everything that they've already been purchased, when they're installed, we pay them a service contract. It's a professional service contract. And so those meters are already in place, and it's about, I think the total contract is somewhere in the neighborhood of $10 million.
Okay, what kind of metering system do we have now?
We have, our district has none.
Okay, how
So-
do y'all get y'all's information on the water withdrawn from
Yes, sir.
the aquifer?
97 entities write us or send us an email or log on to our website quarterly, and they tell us the total volumes that they say came out every month.
Do you have any way to independently verify that?
It's very difficult because there's no totalizer on a meter that we go out and read it again. The other thing is there's no way for me to know whether the meter was on or off. Again, most of the meters that we've seen are either inoperative, poorly operating, or have not yet been calibrated since they were put in. And so I have no way of verifying whether the data is good or bad. We tried.
Okay, so basically what you're doing is you're relying on the user to tell you how much you're using.
That's correct.
All right, how important is it to have this data? I mean,
Well-
is it matter, are these meters, they're going to regulate or test the flow how often?
They read it every hour on the hour, compile it for the day, and then upload the data to the website so that LSU and the Water Institute of the Gulf can get the data for their model.
Okay.
So it's based on, when we entered into the cooperative endeavor agreement with the Water Institute of the Gulf and LSU, they told us, this is what our model needs. We need every hour of every day.
Okay, why would you need every hour of every day?
That's what Dr. Zai of LSU told us he needed for his model.
Okay, is he here by any chance?
No, he's at a seminar. I do have a letter, however, in your packet from the Water Institute of the Gulf explaining what we need.
Okay, because that's what I was just wondering, if you need it hour by hour, for what reason would that be? And
I can't tell you what kind of model he's
but
running.
that's what he needs to,
Yes, sir. That's what he needed. It finally got, to be honest, he talks kind of technical, but I did get that part. And that is included in your packet from Dr. Alyssa Dossman at the Water Institute of the Gulf as to what we're looking for.
I mean, does it matter if you're drawing more water at one time than over, okay, why would that matter?
I think the way he explained it to me was that the shock load of pulling the water pulls the salts. It doesn't go backwards. It pulls, and then it stays where it is. So I think he's trying to look at what the draw is hourly as opposed to total flows and doing an assessment of that. I don't really understand the details of the technical aspects of the geology, but he was very clear to our board in 2 separate meetings because we questioned him on that. Can't you just have the daily flows? And he said, yes. But do you want it, how accurate do you want it? Okay. And we said, we want it as accurate as you can give it to us. And he said, every hour.
Well, can you right now get daily flows at least from the people who are drawing on it?
No, not that I can verify.
So the problem is verification.
Yeah, it's always verification. And how do I know the meter was on or off? How do I know anything, really? How do I know it was when it was calibrated? Is it still in calibration? The way we're doing it now, all the wells that you saw on that screen, almost 2/3 of, over half certainly of all the wells now have meters. And we've gone back, we've checked them. In some of the cases in the industry, we put them on, and there was a question mark, and we go back and we re-verify and we recalibrate, and we make sure that it's accurate. And we know when it's on and if it turns off.
All right, so y'all already have some of these meters
Over half of the
installed.
300 are already installed, yes, sir.
And who are they installed and with what entities?
Municipal governments like Gonzales and West Baton Rouge, industry, a lot of industry already has them in. Industry is a little different because we have entered into agreements, site access agreements with every industry, only like 2 left. But all the meters for all industry is already manufactured and is in our shop, in the shops, and waiting to be installed. And in some cases, several of the industries have already been installed and they're working fine.
And y'all have, is it like real-time data you
Real
can
time,
get?
but we don't necessarily have to read it real time, but it logs it, and then it uploads it so that he has it hourly. But he can access it real time, yes.
All right. And so who is now opposing these meters? Different, is just the Baton Rouge water people, or is it some other entities?
I guess we're getting ready to find out.
Okay.
But nobody has, and I do want to say, I appreciate industry's openness so far. They've allowed us to come in. We've met with them, and quite a number of them have been installed. We're currently on Exxon's property now. They had a specific site agreement they needed. We executed that agreement, and they had a specific manufacturing code that we had to comply with, and we did.
So Exxon is allowing you to test their,
We've already
they're
manufactured.
full of water?
Yes, but they had certain requirements that they needed us to meet, and so we improved the manufacturing on those units to meet their code.
Okay.
And we do that with all of them, though. When somebody says, we'd rather you not have a slab, we want to put footings, we put footings. If they say, we don't want to use DC power, we want you to connect AC, we do that. So we try to meet everybody where they are. The thing for us, this isn't about money. It's about data. Gentlemen, it's not for us. It's got nothing to do with us. You and I are going to be okay. We're fine. We're going to have plenty of water.
All right, well, let me.
It's our children and grandchildren I'm worried
All
about.
right, well, let's go back to the cost of these things.
Sure.
All right, so how much is one of these metering systems cost?
Yeah, it depends on what the design is for that particular application, but anywhere from $20,000 to $30,000.
Okay. And how many of them do we need?
Over
300?
300, just over 300.
300, okay. And y'all have already acquired some of them?
All of them.
All of them. So the question, so we've already got them.
Yes, sir.
Now the question is just putting them on.
Putting them on. Right. It takes time.
Okay. And what is the cost of installing them?
It depends. Every site's different. You know, the ones in industry cost more money, obviously. You know, it takes more time. The ones like in Gonzales went in pretty quick, so that installation, the municipal installations have been pretty fast.
What do you do when you install it? Is it, I mean, you have to tap into the pipe?
No, sir. In fact, that's a great question. We did not, when we started this, we went through our technical committee went through an array of different technologies that we would use. What we didn't want to do is pierce the pipe. We didn't want to force anybody to go out of production at any time, not just for installation, but for maintenance and for care and for recalibration. So the committee looked at it and they presented to us a system that was so very accurate. It's called it's an ultrasonic meter. And when I showed you that picture, there's a little probe on the side of the pipe. You send electricity into a crystal, it emanates a sound wave. Sound waves travel through water 1,500 meters per second, travels through steel duct iron 4,500, 5,000 meters per second. So when it bounces, you know the diameter. When water's flowing, sound moves just like we try to swim across a river, we move with the current. When that sound bounces, it tells you how fast the water's flowing in the pipe. So we're able to read the speed of the water, and we're able to read the diameter of the pipe all from the outside. So this particular system, in fact, some industries, didn't find out until recently, have old meters installed. And instead of taking their system down to recalibrate, like you're talking about, they just put this same meter on their system to recalibrate the units already in the field. It's a very, very highly efficient, highly accurate metering system. Like I said, it meets the highest of AWWA standards.
All right, that's all I have at this point.
Thank you, Senator Lambert. Gary, quick follow-up on something Senator Lambert asked about who's in opposition. Like you said, we're going to find out. But doing rulemaking, do y'all not take on comments and concerns? And were there comments and concerns in opposition?
Yes, sir, there were. On this particular rule, we had two. We had the LCA, principally, and they wrote me a letter. Mostly, the biggest, strongest thing was about access agreements, but I answered every one of their questions, and they did not show up at the hearing. So in the public hearing, they didn't show up. Baton Rouge Water showed up. Baton Rouge Water issued a letter. I responded to the letter in writing. They came to the hearing, and I have all those responses for you, for your files.
Did we accommodate any of the concerns into the rule?
Yeah, the only thing that LCA was concerned about, if I recall, was principally the site, just coming onto their site, and we don't do that. So I responded to them. With respect to the other issues, which were principally legal in question, we responded to it, but it was a legal issue. It wasn't about the rules. It was more about the law, and we had all that done. And because we were in lawsuit at the time, we were in a lawsuit with Baton Rouge Water.
Okay. Senator Klein-Peter for a question.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Beard, I wish the professor would have been here to be able to answer some of these questions.
Yeah, and I apologize, Senator. We didn't find out about this here until yesterday.
Okay. So how many, you're saying that the meters have been bought already?
Yes.
And purchased?
Yes, sir.
So when they get installed, does the customer have to pay that back?
No, sir.
Okay, so
No. We didn't want to do it that way because what would happen is the little small user would get hurt. So instead of doing that, when we first passed, as y'all know, when we first passed the rules the time before, which is the change of rate that was uncontested, we did it so that the big users, especially big industry, would end up paying the lion's share of it, and the smaller users would not, because to put an expensive unit on a small quantity would be too expensive, and it would hurt the little guy, so we didn't want to do that.
Okay. And you're saying that each meter costs around $30,000?
Roughly. Yes, sir. It
And there's
just
about
depends.
300 of them that has to be installed. How many wells don't have any meters? Do you have that data exactly?
I have that, and I can get it for you, but it's a lot. A lot of them.
And most of them have the positive displacement meter, like kind of like everybody's houses?
Some are using mag meters, magnetic flow meters, where there's a sleeve inside the pipe and you use magnetic waves to make that determination. We looked at that one. We opted not to go with that for two reasons. One, in order to fix it or calibrate it, we got to take somebody out of service. Okay. And the second thing is, those tend to coat with iron and manganese, and there's iron and manganese in our water, and I didn't want to get false readings with iron and manganese, and so we opted not to go that direction.
Is there any way that we could have with these new meters, if there is a meter already installed, mm-hmm. could we put that on the pipe to see if it's accurate, if both of them meet up, and if that's the case, then why would we? I understand we want to have monitoring, but why waste a meter on a pipe whenever they already have a meter that's accurate?
Good question. A couple of reasons. One, what we've seen in the field so far is that practically no one is going back in and recalibrating and fixing these meters, and I have no control over whether that meter's on or off or anything in between. As far as the accuracy, yes, we went to Gonzales. The mayor was very open and allowed us to go in, and because theirs is brand new and just put in, we got side by, and both on SCADA, both SCADA systems, and side by side we were within a half of 1% of each other. Two brand new calibrated meters doing the same thing. Now, in some cases, you know that people are dosing with chlorine. So in the case where they're dosing with chlorine, we don't want to be responsible for chemical injection. So it's up to the well owner to do that and using their system.
Okay. So again, the owner is not going to have to pay for any of this?
No, sir.
Okay. No further questions.
Thank you, Senator Klein-Peter. Senator Facey with the question.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Beard, are any other states doing any technology like this, trying to check out their water systems, or is this like one-of-a-kind system?
No, there's a lot of metering systems that are being put in. A lot of it in California, especially in places where you find low water availability.
I guess why I'm asking that question is trying to see what, how accurate have they been, if they've been installed a lot longer than this new system, And is that, how good is that data?
Yeah, the data so far that we found, and when we did the original research, even NASA is using this system for their facilities. We researched it. We found that the technology was valid. It was good. It was something that LSU and the Water Institute of the Gulf came to us and said, yeah, they acknowledged that would be an accurate way of being able to get them the data that they need. And so we're very comfortable and confident. Based on the testing that we've done in the field so far, it's been very accurate, and it's something I feel like that we can hang our hat on with respect to LSU providing us with a three-dimensional model.
Okay, so if I followed your presentation correctly, so these meters that give us data on an hourly basis is what you said?
Yes, they read it hourly, and they compile it for the day, and then it opens up for that day and sends the data into the SCADA system that LSU can have access to.
So some of the, the meters that's existing, would they be able to do it on an hourly basis too, or
No.
is that why we need to move into this
That's why
system?
I needed it. That's correct.
Okay, that's where I
But even if they could, how do
you
I
would
ve-
still need
how do I
how
verify?
accurate it is.
Yeah.
Right.
I can't verify.
Okay. I guess no other questions at this time. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Facey. Senator Connick. Hold on, Senator Connick. You're good to go.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Hello, Gary.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
And I'm dealing in my area, Plaquemines Parish, South Plaquemines,
Yes, sir.
Bluesville. There's a saltwater wedge that's been coming up, and
Right.
it's been causing some, especially in South Plaquemines for a considerable amount of time. Their hot water heaters, their equipment, their washers and dryers, not dryers, but washing machines, all been corrosive, and
Yes.
it's been a problem, and it really got the attention when the wedge started moving up to the New Orleans area. So I know there's an issue here. Other meters installed that you have already, are there any discrepancies with the numbers that being reported?
It's hard to say because what I have is now a year old from what they're doing. So what we're going to do is, without jumping to a judgment of what was then, and now that we're in the middle of a drought and water consumption seems to be higher, I don't want to jump to the conclusion that, oh, look how much higher it is, because it probably is based on the demand. So, but it seems to be higher than what we had before, but I don't want to jump to that conclusion. I would anticipate historically that whenever people self-report, it tends to be a little bit lower than what it is.
Right. Is this going to be any cost to industry, any operational costs, any installation costs?
No, sir.
Okay. What's the end game? I think the end game is to see what's the amount of water being consumed.
How much water is being consumed, and
the fear,
also,
I guess the fear is that the industry is going to have to find another source for their water supply.
well, I'd like
that-
to, I would hope that as we move through this, that when we have good data and some good solutions, what I'd like to do is have some more public hearings, come back and say, here's what we found. Here's what some solutions are. And I would like to be able to see if we can get some federal money and other funds to be able to solve some of these problems. I'm not real sure exactly right now what the answer is, but that could be one of them, yes.
Right. So this is all data collection right
It's
now.
data collection right now.
Why the resistance?
Maybe they don't want to share the data.
That's all I have.
Thank you, Senator Connick. Thank you, Mr. Beard. That's all the questions we have of you right now. We
Awesome.
have some proponents to come up and speak in support. Ms. Kathy Wascom with Lean. Kathy, you can come on up. Jeffrey Dubinsky. They all look like a K, look like an L to me. On itself, you can come to the table too, Jeffrey. We can do two at a time. We have Anthony Seymour here also with Secure Water, which is in support but not wishing to speak. Ladies first. Kathy, go for
Good
it.
afternoon. Kathy Wascom with Louisiana Environmental Action Network. We are here supporting the rules for the Capital Area Groundwater Commission. We have worked since at least 2011 to try to protect Baton Rouge's groundwater. I'm a longtime resident. My family has been of Baton Rouge, and the whole general idea was to have some protection against saltwater intrusion into our drinking water. We were always told how wonderful our drinking water was because it was aquifer water, and we don't want that diminished. And we went to the Metro Council, and our Metro Council in 2011, they passed a resolution asking the Commissioner of Conservation to look into the protection of the groundwater system. And we have been working consistently since 2011 to try to make efforts better via the commission, via the legislative auditor's report, going step by step, following the process as it goes. It's taken this long so that we now have a commission in place that is actually trying to do something to protect our groundwater. The Water Institute of the Gulf is doing a sustainability study, and so to look at the aquifer, what's being withdrawn. They need accurate numbers to put in to do a sustainability study. So this is really our end game, is to keep us in the whole region being able to drink good water, to have a sustainable source of good water, especially in areas that in the future might have drought associated with it. But this has always been the end goal, is to keep the water for people to use as drinkable water. And that is efforts, and it has taken a long time through our local governments, through the legislature, and through the commission to work on this effort. And so we would ask you to support the Capital Area Groundwater Commission and their efforts as they move forward.
Thank you,
And I'll
Kathy.
be glad to answer any questions. And hello, Senator Klein, Peter. And Senator Fessy, hello, good afternoon. Senator Lambert, some are old, been down here a long time.
Old and tenured, Kathy, old and tenured. I don't see any questions right now, Kathy. You
Thank
get off
you.
with none.
Okay.
Could you, gentlemen, please introduce yourself and
Yep,
go
my
ahead?
name's Jeffrey Dubinsky. Do you need me to state my address?
Yes, we got the address.
Okay. So I'm just a member of the public, but I am here in support of the proposed rules. As they were explained here, I don't understand what the issue is or could possibly be. They seem incredibly innocuous, and it's unfortunate that we're having saltwater intrusion issues. It's of great concern to me personally. I grew up in a place where the water was not always suitable to drink. And since living down here since '96, I've enjoyed the abundance of water that we've had and how wonderful it is. There were some questions that were proposed to the gentleman from the Water Commission, and he didn't quite have the answers. I don't have the exact scientific information, but as I was listening to it, this is logic would dictate to me. There was a question about how many users don't have meters. In my opinion, that is not a valid question, because you could have one user that doesn't have a meter. And if they're not being metered, there's no way to know how much they're using, and they could be the biggest draw. They could be drawing the most. We just don't know, right? So it's a reason why everybody should have meters. In order to have accurate data, users need to have the same monitoring systems. So even though somebody may have an old system that's accurate now, it may break. It's not something that's constantly being monitored like the new system would be. And so you have no idea if it breaks, how long it's been broken for. Without it, it could be broken for an entire quarter, and you won't know. Let's see. Why is it the data being requested on such a frequent basis? We need to know how much water is being pulled at any moment from individual locations so they can plot how fast the salt water is migrating with any particular usage amount. And so that's why you'd want to have as much data as you can get. Because the more you use it on any one particular location, the faster the salt water is going to be intruding. So if you have one person that's using a lot, but they're using it in the middle of the night and nobody else is drawing from around there, you'll likely have less salt water being pulled in than if there are a lot of people in the same area that are sucking in at the same time. So that's where that comes in. I hope that answers some other questions that people had.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for your testimony.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it.
Now we're going to go to the opposition cards. We're going to start Trey Hill with Baton Rouge Water. Also, George Guidry with Coke and Georgia Pacific can come to the table. Jeff Kopsky. Oh, Trey, you got a bunch coming to the table at once? Okay, come on, bring him up with you. So we got Patrick Kerr and Trey, and
Brett Furr.
Brett Furr. All right, gentlemen. Whoever wants to go first, introduce yourself and go ahead with your testimony.
Thank you, Senators. I appreciate your time this afternoon. My name is Brett Furr. I am General Counsel for the Baton Rouge Waterworks Company. I want to state for the record that the Baton Rouge Waterworks Company provides the best quality water anywhere, and it does so at the lowest rates of anywhere in the state. This is not about a profit situation, as Gary suggested. Our rates are the lowest in the state. But the operations of Baton Rouge Water are going to be significantly adversely affected by the encroachment on our property through this effort to meter these wells, and we therefore speak in opposition to the rules. The first question I would submit the committee needs to answer or ask, I know the answer, is whether or not the commission even has jurisdiction to do this. The Groundwater Commission doesn't have jurisdiction to do this. Louisiana Revised Statute 383097.1 declares, as follows: groundwater is a matter of public concern, and the state must have a comprehensive groundwater management program. The next section in that statute provides exclusive jurisdiction with the Commissioner of Conservation, not the Groundwater Commission. I'll read that. The legislature hereby recognizes the need for uniformity in the establishment of a comprehensive groundwater management program. Therefore, the state, not a political subdivision, not the Groundwater Commission, the state shall have exclusive jurisdiction over management of groundwater. And this chapter, and this is important, this chapter about the state having exclusive jurisdiction shall supersede and preempt any rule, regulation, code, statute, or ordinance of any political subdivision or other unit of local government. They don't even have the jurisdiction to do what they're trying to do. And you don't really need to go any further because it's not something that legally they're entitled to do. To the extent they would comply with law, they don't have the authority to do that. Further, even in their enabling legislation, it requires that the board, the Groundwater Commission board, work with the Commissioner of Conservation. It says that all of their powers are in conjunction with the Commissioner of Conservation. And under that statement, it says the board, under the Commissioner of Conservation, can do various things. The Commissioner of Conservation is not involved in this, but the Commissioner of Conservation has exclusive jurisdiction. And if they don't have jurisdiction to pass the rules, we don't even need to get to the merits of the rules. Now, let's talk about the rules themselves. This is expropriation by rulemaking is what it is. Pure and simple. Gary showed you that neat little picture of that thing they strap on the pipe, but what he didn't show you is a little building they want to build on our property. They want to come on our property and build a building to do all this stuff. It's in the way. It is a taking of private property. Is there any political subdivision, any unit of government in the state that can just come on private property and pass a rule and just come on private property and take your property? The answer to that is no. DEQ can't even do that. DEQ can't go into industry's property and set something up. Yeah, if there's a violation, emergency, a leak or something like that, they have police powers, but they can't go set up shop. The rule here says, and I quote, "The Capital Area Groundwater Commission is authorized to enter on the well owner's property for the purpose of installing, monitoring, recalibrating, or maintaining the systems." They're passing a rule. They're expropriating our property by rulemaking. There's no basis in law for that. It's unconstitutional. And we've got several Supreme Court cases on this, and I know what I'm going to hear on this in a minute, but we'll talk about that later, where real estate is actually invaded so as to effectually destroy or impair its usefulness. It is a taking in the meaning of the Constitution. A physical invasion is deemed to be a per se taking, no matter how minute the taking is. If they want to take our property, they need to file an expropriation proceeding. They can't do it by rulemaking. And the reason they haven't done it is because there's no public purpose for this. There's no legitimate purpose for this because all the data already exists. And so they're trying to circumvent the expropriation rules by rulemaking. Now, we heard about the legislative auditor's scathing report. Mr. Beard has frequently stated publicly that the Groundwater Commission is just following the directives of the legislative auditor. That's just not the case. If you look at the legislative auditor's report from 2019, and I would encourage you to look particularly at recommendations 10 and 11, the legislative auditor found that although the commission has the authority to require meters on all wells, it has not done so. What the legislative auditor said is require meters on wells. The legislative auditor doesn't say anything about going on well owners' property and installing your own meters. In addition, they criticized the commission for relying on self-reported withdrawal amounts when assessing fees to well owners and not conducting inspections to verify the reported amounts. Everything in state government that generates revenue is subject to audit. Mike Strain audits gas pumps. If you're taking, Gary's worried about people going in and I guess siphoning gas out of the hole and bypassing the pump. Those are criminal violations. You can't do that. What you do is you go out and you audit it. That's what you do. In fact, the legislative auditor found that. They said the commissioner should develop a process to conduct inspections to verify amounts on wells to ensure they are collecting the correct amount in fees. The commission's been around since 1974. They have never once, and how many would that be? 49 years? My math, maybe 39 years. 49 years, has never once audited a single meter in the district. Not once, a single meter in the district have they conducted an audit. Now, when you look at this sustainability contract and Sustainability Partners Cooperative Endeavor Agreement, I'm going to talk on that a little bit, it runs about $30 million over the life of the contract, $30 million. And we're going to talk about who pays for that, but it's $30 million over the life of the contract. If you've got suspicions about what people are reporting, wouldn't you go out there and audit it before you spend $30 million? Is that even past the smell test? Does that even sound remotely reasonable? It's a $30 million deal, and they haven't taken any steps to audit anybody. They are welcome at any time. Show up at our gate. Gary has Pat's cell phone number. You can come in and look and see what we've got. The suggestion that you can't trust us, that we might turn the meters off, is frankly offensive. We are a reputable company. We have been around for over 100 years. We do what we're supposed to do. We have an impeccable reputation with the Louisiana Public Service Commission. And to suggest that we would not do that is just completely inappropriate. Another thing that needs to be taken into consideration is the cost-benefit analysis. $30 million versus going to audit. How do you reconcile that? It's irreconcilable. They talk about the new meters. These new meters are going to do this. These new meters are going to do that. They're calibrated. I was actually in the field when they calibrated the meters. You know how they calibrate the meters? They turn them on, and they go see what our meter's reading. And then they make their meter match ours. Is that really calibration? That's not calibration. They're making their meter match ours. In fact, in one instance where they tested the meter, the first time they put it on, it reported three times, not just a little bit, but 3 times the available or production capacity of that well. So it's reporting 3 times what the well can actually produce. So what do? They move those little sensors around to make it match the other one. It's entirely redundant. There's absolutely no cost benefit to this. The reports, we talked about the reports. We report quarterly because that's what the rules say. We also don't just give you a total number. We give you a report quarterly, by month, by sand, okay? That information is there. And is reported on a quarterly basis because that's what they asked for. We have offered to give them a live feed to our data. another factor in the cost-benefit analysis. They have rejected that at every turn. Recently, because of all these questions, because they say our meters are old, and Pat will talk about this in a little more detail, we have purchased and installed, repiped our wells to put new meters in that will provide by the minute, by the second data on the production, and offered to give them a live feed to that. Don't want that. They want to have their own meters. One can only wonder why. They say this doesn't cost anybody anything. Well, how do you think this gets paid for? It's tax. They tax everybody. So they have, through the increase in this tax, they have raised their revenue from about $800,000 or $900,000 to over $3 million a year to pay for this contract with sustainability partners. This contract, in my view, was entered into improperly. It should have gone to the bond commission. It did not. It's public debt, and they circumvented that rule as well. But it's important to know that they say they bought these meters. They haven't bought these meters. Sustainability Partners has bought these meters. Sustainability Partners owns these meters. The Groundwater Commission doesn't own the meters. Sustainability Partners does. And in the course of the discovery and the litigation, Sustainability Partners suggested that they withhold purchasing these meters until our litigation was resolved. And the answer was no. We want you to go ahead and buy all of them. So then the Groundwater Commission would be obligated to pay for it. Let's talk a little bit about what they can and cannot do. As I mentioned at the outset, they don't even have jurisdiction to do this. I don't even know why we're here, but they don't have jurisdiction to do it. But when you look at the powers of the Groundwater Commission, in conjunction with the Commissioner of Conservation, the word meter is found in that statute in one section and one section only, Section 38-3076A8. 38-3076A8. That's the only place the word meter is found in the whole statute. And what does it say about meters? It says the commission can require well owners who are users at their own expense to meter wells to permit accurate determination of the rate of use. The statute doesn't give them the authority to come out and install their own meters. The statute says they can require us to meter them, and they can approve the meters that we install. Our meters comply with their rules. They have no authority to do this. There's absolutely nothing in the statute that authorizes the commission to come on and install meters on their own property. We heard they're empowered to do all things. Well, we all know that a general statement like that is superseded by a specific statement, and the specific statement here is they can require us to put meters on. Pure and simple, this is a terrible, a flagrant example of government overreach in the worst case. There's no justification for this at all. There's no reason to spend this money. There's no benefit for this. There's no jurisdiction for this, and there's no statutory authority for this. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Furr, you have a question. Senator Connick with a question.
Chairman, good morning, good afternoon. Now, who is Sustainability Partners?
Sustainability Partners is a company from Phoenix, Arizona, and they're a finance company is basically what they are. They go out and they buy things and then they finance it. The imputed interest rate on this contract is 10.5%. Had the Groundwater Commission chosen to do bonds for this, they probably could have gotten it for below 3%, but they wanted to do a deal with Sustainability Partners. It's a finance company. I think the rate in the contract's 10.85%. Not really sure why do you want to do that.
Who do you represent?
That Waterworks Company.
It's a company, like in Jefferson Parish, we have Jefferson Parish Waterworks. It's
an investor-owned utility, and our rates are fixed by the Public Service Commission. And one of the reasons why we have such a
so you're an independent company also.
We are correct.
Okay,
correct.
And you just hired by the council how did you get to be the ability to provide water for Baton Rouge?
Oh, the Baton Rouge Waterworks Company has a franchise agreement and has had it for over 100 years with the city of Baton Rouge to provide water. And it's a contract that's been in place. I think the last renewal of it was in 1977, I think, but they're long-term contracts to provide it. And what that does is it takes the burden of providing water off of municipal government and lets a private company do it. If you've read about Jackson, Mississippi, for example, one of the reasons they've had all the problems is because it's a municipal system, and when they need new police cruisers or need a new ballpark, they take water revenue and do that. We're required by the Public Service Commission to reinvest our money in our water system, and that's why our system is so pristine and in such good shape.
All right. You would agree that having good drinking water is a good public purpose, correct?
Absolutely.
All right. And whose water you pulling from?
So the water is in the Southern Hills Aquifer, and it is, we are a right of capture state, and the water that is there is captured and delivered. We don't really sell water. We provide water service under the rules of the Public Service Commission.
How you make your money?
We make a return on our investment and recover our necessary expenses as approved by the Public Service Commission.
Now, you say that the commission, Groundwater Commission does not have the authority to do anything, but no, the legislature has the authority, correct?
So the legislature could do various things, yes.
And that's why
certainly.
we're here?
Well, I mean, the rulemaking process, I think, is part of the review of the legislature's role in overseeing these agencies of government. But here, as I mentioned, there's no jurisdiction because that's with the Commissioner of Conservation, not the Groundwater Commission.
All right, but the legislature has recognized the need for uniformity in the establishment of comprehensive groundwater management. Therefore, the state shall have exclusive jurisdiction over the management of groundwater. And that's why we're here. We're the state. You would agree? Or is there a difference?
Well, what it says is that the Commissioner of Conservation shall implement that.
I think the state can't delegate that.
Mr. Kerr, you can introduce yourself and go ahead and
Maybe
speak
I'm not
if you wish you
following your
want to.
question, but what the statute says is the state, through the Commissioner of Conservation, shall do these things. And so the legislature passes laws and what have you, but the administrative arm of government, the executive branch through the Commissioner of Conservation, actually implements those policies. But here, that power has been delegated to the Office of Conservation, not to the Groundwater Commission. The Conservation Office has exclusive jurisdiction.
Right. Is what they want to do costing your organization any money?
The taxes we paid last year, which we paid under protest, are nearly $2 million.
So they taxed you for this, all these meters? Is that what you're saying?
Well, they taxed us in general, but predominantly the money is being used to fund the metering program. Yes.
Why should that concern you? If you're getting taxed anyway, they have the right to spend the money where they want to.
There's no justification for the tax if they're not doing the metering program. I mean, that's the only reason they raised it. When you look at the rules that they passed last time, the increase was specifically stated to fund this contract. If you don't have the contract, there's no reason to pay that. I mean, there's a lot of issues, legal issues with regard to the tax that I don't think was really before this committee today, and I'm happy to get into it if you'd like. But
No, I'm just trying to, I think we want accurate numbers. We want to know what water's being drawn, from the aquafilters. And I see a lot of resistance from your company about that. It's a taking and all these other things. But do you see there should be a balance in here someplace? Or?
I think that Pat could probably speak better to policy questions like that than I can. He's the president of the Baton Rouge Waterworks Company, and I don't want to get out ahead of my skis on that, if that's okay.
Mr. Kerr, introduce yourself and go ahead.
I'm Patrick
and
Kerr. I'm the CEO of the Baton Rouge Waterworks.
Okay. Can you answer the question? I was trying to figure out, I'd rather get on the same page and let's get this done if we can.
I agree. First of all, I'll say that saltwater intrusion is a huge issue for us. We've learned a lot through this process, and I'd like to answer your question. I'd like to give my statement at the time is appropriate, but to answer your question specifically, it's redundant. It's a waste. If we have learned through this process that our metering program was not adequate, we've metered correctly, we've reported as best we could under the rules as they existed since 1974. Gary has taught me that we needed to do better. We have chosen to do better. We've installed meters on all of our wells. 96 of the 100 wells have mag meters that Gary described to you installed. They are state-of-the-art. They will allow us to do things. Gary said to you that, for example, they're not going to allow us to use their data to meter our chemicals, to figure out how much chlorine to put in the water because they don't want to take on the responsibility. Well, that's one of the very, very real purposes of putting a meter on a well is for us to reduce the amount of chlorine we're using, for us to figure out which wells produce more water with less electricity and do what we call water balance. There's lots of reasons that we needed to have our own meters, and so we have embarked on doing exactly that. We spent $1,008,640, give or take, to install these 100 meters, including all the telemetry. We've offered to provide that information to the district for free. I talked to Dr. Tsai. I've spoken to the USGS. The USGS model uses annual data, not hourly, annual data. Dr. Tsai uses annual and would like to have quarterly. We can make it available hourly. We've offered to do that, and we will do that. Regardless of whether these rules pass, we're going to give the information to Dr. Sy at LSU and to any other academic or researcher who wants it. As for coming onto our property, they can come on anytime. We had a little bit of a contentious meeting a long time ago, and I said, the way this works for me is you're like my in-laws. You can come visit, you just can't move in. And the lawyer on the other side of the table laughed too, but recognized that that's true. They can come anytime. Please pull into our driveway, call our supervisory control center. We man it 365 days a year, 24 hours a day, and say, I want to do an audit right now. You have access, full access. So another reason that this money is being wasted is because it's a single purpose meter. They are going to use this information only to populate a model. The fact is, so we threw a big number out there, and I think we said 52 billion gallons a year are withdrawn from the aquifer system. Would you like to guess how long it takes for 52 billion gallons of water to flow under the Mississippi River Bridge? About 5 hours. It is a lot of water, okay? But this is Mother Nature. The model that we're using to determine whether or not a new well should be permitted is basically if there's going to be an impact in the next 50 years, give or take, on the aquifer, the answer is no. Those kinds of models don't use hourly data. Right now, as I said, they use annual data. So I'm concerned about the waste of money. Senator Connick, I hope I answered your question. I'd love to go into the rest of my comments and then answer any other questions you might have. Would that be okay?
Let me just ask this one last
Please.
question.
There's a few more questions, too.
Okay.
Don't you want to know where that salt water is and how much more time is going to happen before this occurs?
Absolutely.
Then why not work with them?
I'd love to work with them. We've offered this data. You asked how much it costs. I don't know the numbers. Mr. First said $30 million over the life of the contract. I don't think we should waste $30 million of our people's money. There's all kinds of things we should be studying. I will tell you, people in Baton Rouge waste water, okay? My job as a water provider is to meet their demands 24/7. If there's a fire, to meet those fire demands. We are not politicians. What I've asked the commission to do when I spoke with them week before last is get in front of every parish council, every mayor, every parish president, start talking about the water issue and what we should do about it and make it a political issue. We don't make money selling water. We provide water service. I wish we could use less water. A lot is being done to use less water. One thing that's really kind of neat, during this drought, we were struggling to maintain our system. We don't add wells to increase the amount of water that's used. We add wells to make sure there's enough when people turn on their taps. During the height of the drought, we were struggling. We made it, but we went and talked to the mayor and asked her to help us ask people to stop wasting water by watering in the evenings. It's not good for your grass and it wastes water. She did that. The people of Baton Rouge responded like you wouldn't believe. All of our problems kind of went away by asking. So I think if we can educate the people of Baton Rouge, if we can work with the Commissioner of Conservation and her responsibility to do that and work with the Groundwater Commission, we can make huge strides. Public supply is the highest and best use of groundwater. We are a public supplier of water, regulated by the whole alphabet soup of regulators. We're not in the business of selling water, and I can't convince people of that, but it is the truth. I hope that helps.
It's a lot here, but I'm going to yield.
Thank you, Senator Connick. Senator Lambert with some questioning.
I think I'm going to wait and let him make his presentation, and then I'll follow up with him. That may be better use of our time.
Thank you, Senator Lambert. Senator Facey with a question.
Yeah, I just got, my question was to you. You said the data already exists for what they're trying to get. Is that what I heard you say?
We have provided data to them as it has been requested. It's been requested on a quarterly basis. We provide it quarterly, actually broken down by month. Every quarter, we report 3 months by sand as to what volume of water is taken out of that well. That's what they've asked for the last 49 years, and we've given that to them. If they want other information, as we've said several times, we'll give it to them for free.
Okay,
But that information was not metered information, sir. The commission had three ways to report. The least accurate of them was to figure out how many hours the well ran and about how many gallons a minute it produced and figure that number out. That was until just recently. I think that rule is actually still in place. That was one of the ways people could report. We support them asking well owners to install modern meters.
Okay, that, I'm trying to just make sure we're going in the right direction here. And so the company y'all representing is basically a private company that uses the aquifer to get its water, and you just charge a service for the water to flow through your piping and stuff like that?
Not quite, sir. So no one technically owns the water until it's brought to the surface under the rule of capture. So it's the biggest straw wins rule. It's the way Louisiana works right now. We'd love to figure out a way to fix that. But the water is not owned until someone takes possession of it. But we are an investor-owned utility, started in 1888 by two people from Missouri who came down here and put in a well that drew water from the sands next to the river and provided fire protection downtown. We are not unique. There are lots of investor-owned, we don't call us private, we're owned by investors, investor-owned water utilities. In almost every state, they're regulated by a public service commission, just like Entergy is, just like CLECO is, just like the phone companies used to be.
Well, and I'm trying to get this understood so I make sure I make the right decision.
Yes, sir.
Because I'm from South Louisiana. We just get the water out of Bayou Lafourche and go from there.
I know Mike well.
So I'm trying to understand exactly how it works so I can make the right decision.
Yes, sir.
And so I see some problems, like you said. I think there's been problems since the inception of your company on how who owns what and how it's done. So we're not here to fix that today, but I just want to make sure I'm following how it works.
Yes, sir.
Thank y'all.
We provide the water to the citizens of Baton Rouge. Okay, it's not like we consume the water. We collect the water
Right.
and pipe it to them for their usage, and we charge them basically
fee
a
to get
service
it to
charge
them.
for delivering the water to them.
I got it. I'm in a pipeline business. I totally understand.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Senator Facey. Mr. Kerr, you now have a chance finally to make your statement.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We are opposed to these rules as a redundant waste of money beyond the powers of the Groundwater Commission and as an unconstitutional taking. The Baton Rouge Business Report just this morning reported that every resident of Louisiana now owes $18,900 to cover the debts of the state. Let's not add to it with wasteful actions supported by these costly rules. Please know the Baton Rouge Water Company worked hard in the early 1970s in this very building to establish the Capital Area Groundwater Conservation Commission. We were concerned about saltwater intrusion, and we are still concerned about saltwater intrusion. The fact is, saltwater intrusion is a real problem, and it needs to be dealt with. Wasting money to install what the commission calls an independent metering system will do nothing to protect groundwater or reduce saltwater intrusion. Finalizing these rules and blessing the commission's efforts to install its independent real-time reporting system on private property is a complete waste of money. The scientists on whom the Capital Area Groundwater Conservation Commission is relying to model the impacts of pumpage use models which rely on annual production, as I said earlier. We are respected members of the communities we serve and have never, not once, been accused of being anything less than honest until recently. Because we think these new rules are totally unnecessary, expensive, and wasteful, we have been told, and the public is being told, we must be hiding something. Nothing could be further from the truth. We have absolutely nothing to hide and have no interest in misreporting the quantities of water we produce. One thing we have learned in this process is that the reporting requirements of the Capital Area Groundwater Conservation Commission, while good enough when they were promulgated 5 decades ago, are inadequate now for their purposes and ours. Yes, wells should be metered. The commission should use its statutory authority to require well owners to meter and report consumption on whatever schedule the scientists studying the aquifer need. Thanks to what we've learned through this process about the benefits of individual well metering, we have this year installed the new meters I talked about earlier at a cost of about $1 million. When we complete our installation, instantaneous data will be transmitted to our Supervisory Data and Acquisition Center, which operates 24/7, 365. We need to know when wells become unhealthy. We need to know when a well has a problem. This new system that we've installed will help us do that and will also make good data available to whomever needs it. We have offered to provide our highly accurate data to the commission for free. I've been told repeatedly that the commission has to install its own meters. Actually, as Mr. First said, they've hired a third party to install the meters, and they're buying the data from the third party, and they're paying handsomely for it. To that, I replied, why not simply audit our reports as every environmental regulator does for measurements they require? My take on Ronald Reagan's trust but verify mantra. His response was and continues to be, we do not trust you. We have made the same offer to LSU and the USGS. Rather than saying we don't trust you, Dr. Sy and Max Lindemann said it would be great if you could send the data annually. In another email, we were asked to break down our data and report it monthly, which we can easily and will do. Although every state and federal environmental regulator I know of relies on audited self-reporting, the commission has to have its own system. I disagree. Having the commission force the people of the capital area to pay $20 to $30 million for something they can get for free is a waste. We needed to meter our wells, and we did so. That investment has already been made. Current law allows the commission to require well owners to install meters. The legislative auditor recommended the capital area ensure production data is properly reported. Instead, the commission chose to hire a third party to install meters. I want to add one thing to my written comments. I don't know what has changed, but when we sat down with the executive director of the commission early on, we were told that there would be no financial penalty for changing the way this is done. I don't know that that's still true. At the time, I believe it was true that we could have scaled this back with no cost to the state. As to the rules before you today, Chapter 9 requires a completely arbitrary fee of $2,000. As Gary said, not a big deal. It's just $2,000, but it's $2,000. We are already being assessed taxes for all of the commission's activities. Why should the people of the capital area have to pay more? And it is they who pay every legitimate expense that this water utility has, is the people we serve. The requirements for the permit also include the requirement the well owner give to the commission a section of pipe for their meter and a 6x6 pad for installation of their wasteful monitoring equipment. This is a taking, plain and simple. When I go to get a workover rig in and their equipment is in the way, it's a problem. We offered the commission to put their equipment inside one of our buildings, allow us to power it. The answer was no. We have to use our own cellular and our own solar-powered battery array. First I heard of it today that Gary's working with other people to do something different than that. When I said it, he told me I could turn the power off, and so that wasn't okay. Anyway, it's a plain and simple taking, wasteful in that it wholly duplicates the metering we've already done, and we have to do the metering regardless because we need it for purposes other than the commission's purpose. Another troubling rule the commission is asking you to approve is the need to re-permit any well which undergoes any physical modification. Yes, the rule lists 2 examples of what types of modifications require a permit. However, they use the words such as in that list. My understanding is that the commission can require permits for any modification. A little parenthetical such as like that is not exclusive. And so my concern would be at the height of a drought, we've got to get a workover rig in to fix a well that's got a mechanical problem, and I've got to wait for a permit from the commission to do that. We applied for a permit in January of this year with the commission. They gave themselves some more time 2 weeks ago to continue to process that permit. We can't wait 10 months for a permit from the commission. We can't wait 10 days for a permit from the commission when we're in extreme situations. So that part of the rule is absolutely not workable for us. If a well goes out of service and we need to get to work on it, we need to do that. The commission has the power. I believe the commission has the power, instead of regulating individual wells, permitting individual wells, to regulate how much water is actually withdrawn. They can go to any of us with a science-based reason and say, you need to reduce your production. Again, a political question. Madam Mayor, I'm very sorry. We cannot put any more new subdivisions in this city because we don't have enough water could be a very real response to a limitation from the commission on how much water we can use. It's finite, it's real. This should be the last place on earth that becomes a problem. It just blows me away that we're having these issues raise themselves. As to Chapter 7 rules, I will again point out the waste of the money the commission will be responsible for the rule passes. The first sentence of the first rule change, Section 707A, authorizes the commission to waste millions of dollars to install remote monitoring. The scientists on whom the commission relies use annual data. Real-time monitoring serves no purpose and is a waste. Furthermore, the commission is attempting by simply writing a rule to authorize themselves to enter onto the well owner's property for the purpose of installing their equipment. We reiterate our offer to give the commission any scientist or academic with reasonable need access to the data we produce for free. The commission can audit us to ensure we are reporting accurately. Dropping down a couple of paragraphs, I apologize for using so much of your time. The bottom line is the commission should use its existing power to require well owners to install meters and report production. They should then audit the well owners' reporting. They should end their wasteful program of paying a third party exorbitant fees to gather data they can have for free. And they should work with the Commissioner of Conservation to educate all users about how precious a resource water is and to build a statewide program for the management of our water resources. Speaking of waste, did you know the Bottled Water Association, so the guys that make bottled water, say it takes 1.39 liters of water to fill a 1 liter bottle of water. That's in addition to the 1.4 gallons of water it takes to produce the bottle itself. We have a lot of education to do. There's all kinds of bottled water running around in a community that absolutely doesn't need to drink bottled water. I know we have work to do. It breaks my heart when I see people using SNAP money to buy bottled water because they fear the water that comes out of their tap. There's a lot for us to do to fix that. Please know I completely understand the remarks I'm making are under oath. You can rely on me and the Baton Rouge Water Company to be honest in all we do. Thank you for your time today, and I'm happy to answer questions.
Thank you, Mr. Kerr. I think Senator Lambert has a question. He does.
All right. I guess one of my concerns is, what is the life expectancy of the Southern Hills Aquifer? Are y'all doing anything to look at that?
So that's a very interesting question, Senator Lambert.
Well, I'm concerned because I
I
drink
am
the water,
too.
and I know a lot of other people do, and we have the best water there is.
Yes, sir, we do. We can't afford to make you pay to do all the work necessary to study the aquifer system. We rely on the Groundwater Commission, the Commissioner of Conservation, to hire experts. We had a critical problem years ago that we helped solve to the tune of a few $1 million when we installed a one-of-its-kind saltwater scavenging well system. We took an aquifer that has salt water in it. Salt water is more dense than fresh water, so it sinks to the bottom. We actually hired Dr. Sy, and we hired a company called Lane Hydro, and they modeled how best to pull the salt water out of the bottom of the aquifer and just pull fresh water off the top and provide the fresh water to the people of Baton Rouge and put the salt water in the Mississippi River. We've been doing that now for a decade or so. It's been incredibly effective. Our belief and our hope is that we can have solutions like that when salt water becomes more of an issue. We can solve the problem without stopping economic development in the state.
All right. Well, and that, you kind of bring me to my next question. The Groundwater Commission, isn't it their job to kind of look at what's the life expectancy of this aquifer?
I think it's their job to make sure it's there forever.
Okay.
And
I know it seems like I'm refereeing between my 3-year-old grandson and my 5-year-old grandson as to who did what.
Yes, sir.
You're telling me right now that you will give them the real-time data. If they need by the hour, you have the ability to do that.
Yes, sir.
And the LSU and the Water Institute is involved in this, correct? As far as you know with the
I have not spoken to anyone at the Water Institute. I've spoken to the USGS's scientist, a gentleman named Max Lindemann, and I've spoken to Dr. Sy, who is LSU's lead researcher on this issue. I've not spoken with the Water Institute.
All right. And, I've had some people been kind of lobbied on this a little bit.
I'm surprised.
I know that one of the things they say that the hourly readings are very important because if I'm drawing a whole lot of water at one time, doesn't that create a bigger void where salt water can move?
No, sir.
It does not?
And I'll try to explain that as best I can.
Okay.
Coning happens. So I hate this analogy.
What is
but
coning?
So did you ever drink a McDonald's Coke with a big old McDonald's straw versus trying to suck one out of a Twizzler straw? And when you suck on that McDonald's Coke in their clear plastic, the Coke kind of, you can see it cones down in the middle and it's still kind of high at the edges. Same thing happens in sand when you pull water out. It cones down. And so if the impact is very local. It takes, as Mr. Beard said, the water we're drinking today fell at the time of Christ. It took 2,000 years for it to get here from southern Mississippi. It doesn't, an acute demand does not impact the water level a mile away. The drought that we just experienced will be seen over time, but it's not going to be, there's no minute-by-minute impact. If there were, it would behoove us to run a well for a little while, turn it off, run a well for a little while, turn it off. That's not how it works.
Or it would be to run the well at a constant flow, and that way you know what's happening, where if you draw it all at once, then you are creating a void, which more water moves in to fill that voided space.
Yes, sir. Now, one of the things that's critically important about this is this is not like a swimming pool where when you take water out, you can see the water level drop in the pool. If you covered your pool, the water in it is at the same level as the water up in Mississippi, which is very far upslope from us. So if we just it used to be when you put a well in, water would just flow out of it.
Right.
It flew freely. That's because the water level was high enough, and it saw that level in Mississippi. It's self-leveling, so the water would flow out. Well, we still have pressure well above the top of the sand. It doesn't come to the surface anymore, but it's well above the top of the sand. So when I withdraw water in the aquifer, it's not seen at the recharge area. That change is not seen at the recharge area. It takes time. It takes a long time for it to get there.
But it's seen at the area of the well.
It is seen at the area of the well. Yes, sir. But the salt water, as was shown on the slides, isn't at the well yet. It's at some wells. We have background levels. At many wells, we have higher levels of salinity at some wells. The well that we drilled on North Boulevard that I told you was the well couple, we have salt water in the base of that. And one of our objectives was to figure out how we can use the good water off the top. It's been completely effective. We've received awards from the National Groundwater Association for it. Commissioner of Conservation is very pleased with it. We report on it. The Capitol Area Groundwater Commission was incredibly pleased with it. They had been planning to drill their own well couple in the 2,000-foot sand. We're not an advocate for that because the 2,000-foot sand water level is declining. The 1,500's not. There's a lot of work to be done, and I would love to use this money to do good work as opposed to waste it. And I think we should make the investment. I think the people of Baton Rouge deserve to be educated.
And I guess going with that, I mean, I see where the groundwater people are coming from. That, they're charged with the obligation to, make sure this aquifer is sustainable.
Yes, sir.
And I assume that y'all want to do that too, because you're in business of basically selling the water out of the aquifer.
Sir, I chaired the Capitol Area Groundwater Conservation Commission. We came to this body last year, and you all changed the law to allow the Baton Rouge Water Company a seat at the table, to allow investor-owned utilities a seat at the table with the Groundwater Commission. We'd love to have that seat so we can make our voices heard. We've not been given the opportunity. We hope to at some point get back on the commission and be able to join the conversations. We think we have an important point to make.
Y'all are not on the commission now?
No, sir, we're not.
Okay.
We're not. We're trying. Our governor chose to appoint someone else and who's incredibly well qualified individually, but doesn't meet the requirements of the statute, in our opinion. But
I think I remember that.
So we're working. We're working. We'd love to have a voice, and people ask me why I would do that, why I would want to get thrown into the lion's den. And my answer is because it's important. And why I wouldn't, I've been asked why I don't ask the governor to appoint someone who works for me to do that. And the answer is I'd like to break down some of these barriers. There's some real animus between us and individual members of the commission that I think I could help work through. Maybe we will, maybe we won't.
Can they require y'all to give y'all real-time, to give them real-time information from your well monitoring system?
I don't know if they could require it, but if they asked, we'd give it to them. Absolutely. Made that offer. We can figure out how to do it. We're bringing it in both by radio and by internet, and we can give it to them, and we'll figure out a way to feed it to them.
Is their system, or those well monitors, or whatever you want to call them, flow monitors, more accurate than what you're doing now? What's the difference in them?
Well, it made me smile when it was said that the American Water Works Association approves these well meters. I'm actually the president of the American Water Works Association, and these meters are not being used for the purpose for which they were designed and the way we certified them. There are no revenue strap-on meters used for revenue purposes. We use strap-on ultrasonics to do major studies. We're trying to find a leak in an area. We'll put strap-on meters on so we can watch trends. Accurate to within 0.5%. Yeah, as long as they were calibrated against the meter that they're being compared to. So one of the reasons that this is a problem, when we built our wells, we didn't build them to put strap-on meters on. Strap-on meters require certain lengths of straight pipe, so there's no turbulence, there's no eddies in the water. If there are, it screws up that pulse that goes in the water. Our arguments about this have fallen on deaf ears. The experts that are being used, guess what they sell for a living? Meters. So we had to replumb, to install the meters that we installed, we had to get pipe fitters out there and replumb our discharges to make sure we had adequate flow ranges of clear pipe so that we're not getting turbulence. We did that. Mr. Furr mentioned that they move those little sensors, the rail that was showing you in the picture. There's two transducers. Basically, they bounce the signal off the other side of the pipe and measure how long it takes to get there. And to change what it says is flowing past it, all you do is move the sensors closer and further apart. That's how you calibrate. So if you buy one of these meters that's in a engineered pipe we call it a flow tube that's manufactured specifically as a metering chamber, you can get very, very accurate with these. If you measure against another meter that's accurate, you can get very accurate with them. My concern isn't that these meters are imperfect. My concern is they're a waste of money. That's my real concern.
Do any of the other entities, like they were talking about these meters that have been installed, y'all do not have any meters on your wells?
We have meters on 96.
I mean, their meters, the ones that I think
No,
you
sir,
showed
we
me
don't.
something they was.
We don't. They've asked us to install them, and we've told them no, that we'd like the courts to decide whether they have the authority or not, and we're in litigation. We took a big lump last Friday in litigation, but we're going to move on with litigation and try and get a final resolution on whether they're right or not.
So right now, these regulations are actually in court?
No, the regulations are not. The regulations are.
Prior regulations.
No, we haven't. There's nothing in our petition about these regulations. Nothing. Our concern about these regulations, again, is they're through regulation perfecting things that they're doing that they shouldn't be doing, going on private property. You know, I can't come up with a great analogy for what might happen at your home, but if your neighbors were complaining that your dog's barking too much, could the city come out and put a decibel meter in your driveway? No, they could put it in the neutral ground, but they couldn't put it in your driveway. If the neighbors are complaining that there's too much noise in your backyard, could they go out and put some kind of sensor out there? Well,
They can put it in the person who's complaining yard.
they could do that. They could do that with his permission. Yep.
Yeah.
But I struggle for a good analogy, but this is not. It's a taking. It's plain and simple. It's a taking of our property.
I hear you saying that, and I don't know how big an area they need.
6 by 6 feet.
That's not necessarily a big area, but what you're telling me is you offered to let them put them in your buildings. You're okay with the meters being put in your buildings? Or whatever?
What I told Mr. Beard at the time was, we would let him put equipment in our buildings to monitor. We would split report off of our meters and let him take real-time data off of our meters and do it whatever he wants with it. So he could be monitoring the meter to make sure it's working when the pump's running. He could do all that, but using our meters instead of wasting all that money.
Okay, how would he be able to calibrate your meters? How does he know they're accurate? I guess now we get to that question. Because he has no right to come in and monitor that meter or
does.
calibrate it, does he? Oh, he
Yes, sir, I
does?
believe he does with his powers. He could come visit. He just can't move in. He absolutely could. His meters, our meters, to be perfectly candid with you, there's no way to calibrate them. They're tested and they're certified. The only way to calibrate a meter like that is to get a big old known volume vessel and fill it up. And when we're talking about a meter that's producing 1,000 or 1,200 gallons a minute, it's got to be a really big vessel. So there's scientific ways to ensure that the meters are accurate, and we rely on them. So one of the reasons we wanted to install these meters is the cost of chemicals has gone through the roof. Chlorine is incredibly expensive today. If we can reduce the amount of chlorine that we have to use, not only does it reduce our operating expense, but it reduces the amount of chlorine that our customers consume. In the final analysis, they're consuming that. And so if I can reduce it and still meet the state's requirement to have 1/2 of a part per million of chlorine resident in the last drop of water we provide, we're golden. So those are the kinds of things that I can get out of my metering system that the commission will not allow us to use their metering system to do, because they're afraid of the liability, and they should be afraid of the liability. If they're wrong and their meters are wrong and we overdose because of that, it's a problem. I wouldn't rely on their meters for it either. So if all they need is to know exactly how much water was produced, we'll give it to them.
Okay, but the problem becomes, are you sure that much water is being produced?
Yes, sir, we're sure,
You're-
within 1%. Within 1%, we're sure. The manufacturers assure us that that's how accurate they are, the way they're installed. And we will ensure that we continue to maintain them efficiently. If the commission wants to write rules about maintenance of meters, we'd be happy to sit down and work with them on that. Love to do it. We have nothing to hide, Senator. And there's no benefit to us underreporting how much water is used. Our utility is regulated. Our legitimate expenses, including this groundwater fee, are paid by mostly by our customers. We use about 15% of the water we produce for flushing, for fighting fires, for leaks, for breaks. That we're paying those fees. Everything else is being passed along to our customers as a line item on their bill.
All right,
Senator Lambert, that's it?
that's it.
Thank you, sir. Gentlemen, we're out of questions for you. Thank you very much for coming to the table. If we can bring the Exxon Mobil crew up, I think we have 3 of those. We had some late cards in support come in, not wishing to speak. Colette Dean for self, Riley Dean for self, and Tanya Wicker for self also.
Morning.
Introduce yourself
Good
and,
afternoon.
and go ahead and do your testimony.
Mr. Chairman, committee members, I'm Jeff Kopsky with ExxonMobil State Government Relations. Just wanted to clarify a couple of points that have been raised during today's proceedings. And with me is our Public Affairs. I'll let her introduce herself. Go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Rory DeNicola. I'm ExxonMobil Public Affairs. Thank you for having us this afternoon.
Just one thing, I think listening to some of the comments, thing that came to me was a lot of agreement on the what, the concern is on the how. And I think that's some of the things that we were going to be touching on in our comments on the how of the proposed regulations.
Yeah, so just to clarify a couple of things, we do have a site agreement with the commission. We signed a site agreement where they were allowed to come on site and have their contractor scope where these things would go on place. but no work has been started. Nothing, we have as you can imagine with the industry, it's a long process of waivers, specs, submitting all that for approvals and everything, but they have been on site to scope where these meters would go, if that would start that process. So that's the only thing that's happened so far. No meters have been installed, no work has been completed, none of that. We're not close to that. So just wanted to clarify that. And then wanted to talk about a couple of things. I know we mentioned the LCA rules. We did submit quite a few comments with the LCA as an industry whole, and I just wanted to talk about a couple of those things. As you can imagine, we already use flow meters since the Clean Water Act of 1972, which that's been from the EPA, DEQ. We've been using flow meters. We use industry methods to measure the volumes. We do the reporting that is required already, as you can imagine. I understand at the metering, there is companies or businesses that don't, but we do this and we do it reporting. We have the maintenance and calibration, and we steward according to the hydrocarbon control practices. I do also want to apologize. Our technical person is out of state, so unfortunately, I'm not the technical person, but that's why I wanted to make sure I'm reading correctly. Adopting the flow meter requirements similar to state and federal flow measurement requirements, obviously they present for fewer complications for a site such as ExxonMobil because they've already demonstrated the enforceability that are supported by EPA and LDEQ. So like I stated earlier, we've been doing this for years already according to those rules. We have these installed on all of our wells already, and they are like the Baton Rouge Water Company talked about, they're in our pipes already. It's not something on the outside. So they're able to, the flow is already, it's established a very accurate way. The amendments, they don't actually provide an option for the well owner to install and implement, like we talked about, how we already have these installed. If they would be able to, the commission, they could, personnel representatives, they would have to enter our industrial property, and that's where some of the concern comes when they're on our site, all the safety requirements, how they're having to install. Some of the areas where they have to install is very small. I know we talked about some of the pipes, some of our smaller plants. There's not an area where they can actually put some of these concrete, because it's not just installing the actual flow meter. You have to install a concrete pad to put either an electrical box or a solar panel. So it's a lot more than just this on a meter. It's a whole section next to it, and some of that area is not, we don't necessarily have that area. We also, our companies maintain that we must be operated with the stringent safety requirements. So again, the federal, state, and local requirements. And then access to the site. So one of the concerns we had was, we get regulated all the time, so the access to our sites we quite well understand. And we get that. DEQ comes on, emergency, that kind of stuff. So we just want to make sure that, who they're using, what we're using. We are provided notification. We have the safety standards. We have protocols. We have national, state, and local standards. We need the adequate notice for these personnel. Our visitors and personnel, we have to be accounted for at all times on our premises, as you can understand with the type of facility that we have. And then part of the well permitting, it's kind of broad, the language that they talk about in 907E. It talks about any modification. It's kind of broad, and that was one of our major concerns. This could be implied to mean that any change, including a replacement in kind of equipment due to routine maintenance or repair. And that's kind of concerning to our company, because if work is required on an immediate or emergency basis, it could be a major delay in work or any type of flow for us with their review or approval. And that could just have unintended consequences that would impact our site wells water use. Like we stated, we have worked with the commission. We've waited on the Water Institute of Gulf Sound study. I do talk to Dr. Alyssa Dousman. I know that'll be completed next year. And we've always supported that sound study to preserve the aquifer. We've worked with Gary Beard and his commission, and we just want to make sure that this is in good for all of us. And with us currently already having the flow meters installed, want to make sure that we're doing the best thing possible for our company.
I see no questions, and I think, oh, wait. Senator Lambert is
Yes.
first. Senator Lambert.
All right. You've heard what the groundwater wants to do, to put these meters on the outside of the pipe. Are y'all opposed to that? It sounds like they just got to comply with y'all's regulations. Are you opposed to them with the rules?
So I think, and I had to step out. I think where we would fall is closer to where the Baton Rouge Water Company is a value proposition on these. I know we have our metering system we have, so I can't vouch for the veracity or the accuracy of those meters. I know from your experience as chairman of the Environment Committee, you know that we're subjected to volumes and volumes of regulation.
Right.
And those regulations basically tell us what to do, and then we're going to come check to see if you do what we say. And that's generally how the process works. It's generally, I don't think we have DEQ or EPA coming on our property and actually installing things and
Not
doing
yet,
it.
anyway.
Well, so I mean, it's just the analogy, and I think that's sort of a frame of reference. If they're, I don't know, do they want to talk? But I mean, I think that's one of the issues that we know the regulatory relationship.
Right.
And this is, and so when you say, do we have an objection to that? I personally don't know enough about this device. I do know that it's unusual to think that we would bring, the government would come into our site and install something in our site using government employees or government contractors to do it. And then ultimately they would leave, and then we're responsible for whatever happens to it. So, I mean, it's sort of like.
Well, let me ask you this,
Yeah.
and I guess, do y'all have the ability to give them usage by the hour?
Our flow meters currently, yes.
Okay. Have they
They
ever
can report
asked
the
for it?
Have they
I
ever
mean,
asked
as a-
for it? I don't know if they've ever asked for it. So I know the person that reports, and I could ask who does our reporting. I know I've seen the data is a monthly, quarterly, but it's reported however they ask for it currently. But it could be done on hourly if it was asked for. I mean, it's steady reporting.
All right, now I
outstanding.
guess then, you get into like verification. Is it, is the fox guarding the hen house? How do we know, or how would they know that the information is accurate from y'all's meters? Is there any way to
Oh, I think we could work with them.
Compromise them.
I think that's something that we could work on. I mean, I think that's certainly something we could work on with them if they're interested in validating our meters, what we're doing, and using that baselining. I think, I think we could certainly work with them on off of our stuff.
I know, y'all are drawing also some water from the aquifers. The water that y'all are drawing, is that drinkable water or is it other water?
So I can tell you some of what we have, the facts that I'll read, because again, not technical right here. 70% of our cooling towers are on river water. We have been we've had a 40% decrease in our 2,000-foot well water over the last 10 years. We've been steady replacing our 1,500 and 2,000 aquifer wells with alternate sources. We've invested a little over $13 million in the last 15 years to reduce our water withdrawals. And we invest about $3 million annually to maintain our Mississippi River water system. So our withdrawals over, I'm sorry, I didn't know if somebody was saying something. 2005 to 2022, we've declined 14.4 million gallons per day. So we're always in the process of reducing and replacing.
And given our admitted information deficit here, I mean, the Groundwater Commission may know that which sands we're drawing from, and I personally don't, but I know we surely want to try not to do them. We're pulling from different sands. I think we are. I think that's
We
what
have
the reference.
1,200, 1,400, 1,500.
But they would probably be able to.
To tell which sands are
which sands
drinkable
we're,
water?
yeah.
All right, but you think you could provide them with the hourly usage if it was in the regulations?
Yep.
Yeah,
Okay. That's all I have.
Thank you, Senator Lambert. Now Senator Facey with a question.
Mr. Chairman. So you said how much y'all reduced your water. How much do y'all use out of the aquifer a day?
That would be a question I'd have to ask the technical
Okay,
person.
technical question. And I guess the only reason I'm asking that, I'm just trying to see is how, as far as, how important the flow meters are and as y'all switch into other operations and other ways to get your water, over a timeline, are y'all trying to totally get away from the aquifer or?
We are always looking at ways to reduce. Like I said, we've worked with the commission for the past, however many years, and we work with the Water Institute of Gulf of always looking at ways to reduce our usage and to support the aquifer. So that's a constant use of either going to shallower wells or doing the river water. So it is always a reduction it's a company goal and an industry goal. So what the actual reduction is, number-wise, I'd have to ask the technical
You
person.
got that number.
Yes, sir.
So to the point, it's in our interests as a operation
Yes.
to see that
That
prolong the
that
life
we
of the
fix the
aquifer,
problem.
as well as our employees and our
Yes.
neighbors. So I think.
And that's where I'm going. I think if we all come together and work together, we'll try to solve this problem. But, we can't be fighting back and forth on that. We got to come up with a common fix that we can all work together on. And that's, I'm like I said, I'm South Louisiana. We can't use the groundwater.
No,
we got-
it wouldn't be drinking water down there.
No, that's it. So anyway, I guess my next part of it is the flow meters y'all using now. How long have they been in? Is it older meters, newer meters? Or?
They are, within the last few years, I know they've been replacing them. I was texting our business lead to ask that question, and I was waiting on his response because they are the newest ones that they can use. They're called it's like some kind of special term. That's what I was trying to ask him while I was texting him. Obviously, we're replaced with the newest ones, but they're the flow meters that are installed inside to make sure you get the correct calibration.
Right.
And it alerts if it's not, it's got all these alerts, if the flow is low or if it's too high or if it's turned off, whatever. We get alerts for everything, but they're not old by any means because we have to replace them.
So if they did want the data, y'all could probably send that over
Yes, sir.
through the computer and let them see that data on a regular basis.
Mm-hmm.
So there was, you'd almost be, if you want to set another meter, it would be repetition of what you got already.
Exactly.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Facey. That's all the questions we have. We also had Liz Mangum not wishing to speak
No.
on behalf of
Thank you.
ExxonMobil. We still have George Guidry with Coke and Georgia Pacific, who's good. And Joe Mapes from Foreign Bureau is opposition, but not wishing to speak also. Senator Lambert has
Yeah. If we could, I'm just curious to know if Georgia Pacific has the ability to give hourly readings or not, if he knows, if Mr. Guidry knows.
I don't know. No, we have.
Mr. Guidry to the table, please. Got to get on the record. Sorry, George.
Thanks, Senator Lambert.
Introduce yourself.
I'm George Guidry with Coke Company's public sector. Also represent Georgia Pacific because they're part of Coke. I think we've entered into agreements with the Groundwater Commission so that they can come on our property. They have installed these strap-on meters. I will say, and because you've heard this testimony already, just because they say they're accurate does not mean they're accurate. We had one meter that was actually showing over twice the design capacity for the well. So design capacity of the well, 1,200 gallons per minute. So this thing was showing over 3,000. So it does matter where they're put. They have to position them right. This particular one evidently was too close to a flange, was picking up all kind of turbulence, and therefore the measurements were wrong. So just because someone comes up here and tells you, well, these meters are accurate, does not mean they're accurate, okay? They're just not. If you get them correctly, get them placed correctly, they probably are. I don't know. I know we have meters on all our wells. I can't tell you whether that we could give them minute by minute, hour by hour flow volumes. I don't know that.
Okay, because I mean, that's something that, it seems to be if you can provide that information, it seems like you maybe ought to have the option to do that as long as it's, accurate. But right now, Georgia Pacific has allowed these to be installed on there?
And that's what I understand.
Okay.
Now, our issues with it is if there is a dispute over the readings and they have to send a third party in to fix the meter or correct it or verify that it's flowing right, that we have to pay that. That's
You
in their
have to
rules.
pay-
That's in their rules. That's in their proposed rule. If it's going to be their meter, and if I'm a landowner and I challenge it, and I would say that if their meter's correct, then maybe okay.
Then you
I'll
pay for it.
But if their meter's not correct, they should pay for it, not the well owner.
Okay, and in the rules as they are now, it provides that you pay for it? If
The
they said-
proposed rule says that the well owner would pay for it. That's correct.
Okay,
I didn't think that was fair.
it doesn't sound fair. Okay.
Thank you, George. There's no more questions. We also had Mr. Murphy Foster from LAGWD here for just information. You didn't mark anything on the card, so I didn't know if you want to speak or not.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I'm Murphy Foster,
Have a seat and introduce yourself.
and I represent the Groundwater Commission, and I would like to speak, and I'll try to be brief. I appreciate you hearing my comments.
Okay.
I'd like to close the loop on a couple of things that you've heard today. You heard Mr. Furr testify on behalf of Baton Rouge Water Company. He said it was an illegal, unconstitutional taking, strapping these meters on, that it was a violation of the public bid law, and that it was an illegal tax. It wasn't really a fee. It's kind of deja vu all over again. Mr. Furr and I were in court on Friday before a judge in the 19th JDC because the Baton Rouge Water Company sued the Groundwater Commission about a year and a half ago alleging these things, that it was an unconstitutional taking, an illegal tax, and it violated the public bid law. We filed exceptions of no cause of action on all three of those, and on Friday, the judge in the 19th JDC agreed with us and threw all of those claims out. We're not here to argue legalities. That's why we go to court. They filed a suit. We answered the suit. And yes, they have the right to appeal. They have the right even to try to clean up their pleadings if they want to before their appeal. But that's not why we're here today. We're here today to see whether or not the rules that were made by this committee, who listened to Dr. Sy and who listened to all the experts come in and present as to why this data was needed, did so in an arbitrary or capricious manner, or did they do their best job? And are these rules that they believe in good faith are needed by the Groundwater Commission to do their job? The suggestion that the Groundwater Commission is outside of its lane, that this isn't its jurisdiction, is laughable. All you have to do is read the statute. All you have to do is read the report of the legislative auditor. It's clearly within the lane. And the committee, or the commission rather, heard from the experts and believed that this was necessary, that these rules were necessary. Pat Kerr said something when he was up here that I found interesting. He said he learned a lot through the process that Baton Rouge Water Company has to do a better job and that his existing meters were not sufficient. So let me tell you what happened. After they filed the lawsuit, those of you who are lawyers know how it works. Discovery flows back and forth. And one of the things we asked them to produce was data, the data hourly per strata. They purported to do that and eventually did do that. We hired an expert to analyze it, and it was all false. It was all contrived. It didn't make any sense whatsoever. As a matter of fact, you have before you in the package that we provided to you a report from Carol Martinson, and her conclusion at the end of her expert's report said, and I quote, "A significant amount of the data provided by Baton Rouge Water Works has been inaccurately recorded and reported to the commission." No, we don't trust Baton Rouge Water Company. Everybody else has agreed to this because they realize the importance of it and the significance of this aquifer to this community. It's got to be done. If I'm to believe Mr. Kerr, we just all need to get along. And we shouldn't be spending this money frivolously, even though it's not coming out of the waterworks pocket. That's their motivation, apparently. Why is it that they are complaining? They've got the most wells within the aquifer. They have the ability to do the most damage to the aquifer. We believe that the experts are right, and we do need to meter and monitor as required by the statute, as required by the legislative auditor, as requested by Dr. Seid, the Water Institute, the USGS. We need to know what's there, and the only way to do it is with proper monitoring, metering and monitoring. Now, the Waterworks says they're replacing all their meters. Do you know that when this lawsuit was filed, I think you should know that when this lawsuit was filed, it was filed by Baton Rouge Water Company and West Baton Rouge Parish. So we go to West Baton Rouge Parish and look at what they've got by way of water wells and meters. And what we learned is that the data that they produced showed that only 7 of their 16 wells had working meters, 6 of which reported duplicate and identical flows over the last 2 years. That's not a one-off. This is somebody that thought they had a right to sue us because they thought we were out of our lane in requesting metering and monitoring. And we find out that they've got meters that haven't worked in years. Now, in the case of Baton Rouge Water, they've now learned through this lawsuit process, apparently, that they need new meters, and they're spending $1 million to put new meters on, and that's great. But how do we know that we're getting proper readings? Their meters don't report to a SCADA system that reports directly to us. We've got to rely on them to send us the data. Well, they did that in April of this year, and Dr. Martinson said that data was baloney. So do we trust them? We'd rather not trust them. If there was a way we could trust them, if there was a way that we could ensure that the monitors they use, the meters that they use and the monitoring system would report to us accurate data, and we were guaranteed that, that would be great. Let me suggest, I don't want to be cynical, but let me suggest an illegal motive or a untoward motive. Mr. Kerr said they're spending $1 million this year on putting in new meters because they discovered their old meters were bad. By the way, their old meters hadn't been calibrated in decades. So now we're going to trust them. So he's spending $1 million on new meters. He gets to go to the PSC and say, can you give me $1 million or a portion of that $1 million back because we're adding to our system? Could that be a motive? I don't know. Could it be a motive that they're not properly reporting or that they're taking so much water out of the aquifer they don't want us to know? We asked throughout this litigation, and I don't want to burden you with everything that's going on there, but we asked them, how much water are you wasting? I heard today, the first time, answer to that question. He's saying 15%. 15% of what we take out of the aquifer goes to pump, goes for fires, goes to clean out our pumps, to clean out our pipes, and some of it's lost through leaks. 15% lost. How much aren't we entitled to know how much they actually take out of the ground and how much they lose? We need to know what is coming out of this aquifer. Otherwise, we're going to be in the same jam that New Orleans is, that Plaquemine Parish is, because we're going to have to pull from the river. What happens if this aquifer goes dry or becomes too salty? Well, I asked that to Mr. Kerr in his deposition. They've actually made plans for a pumping plant south of Baton Rouge to draw water from the river because they know it's a possibility. In his deposition, he didn't even think that saltwater intrusion to the aquifer was the #1 problem that it had. It obviously is, and that's why we're here. I'm not here to try a lawsuit before you. We had a judge do that. We got a ruling. It's going to continue with their appeal. But I would ask you to trust the people on this commission who heard the facts, who heard the data, who heard the testimony of the experts and say, these two rules are needed. And I believe they are too, and I would hope that you would favorably consider them.
Thank you so
I'll
much.
answer any questions you have any.
Do we have, oh, we do. Senator Lambert.
All right, Mr. Foster. All right, I have to agree with you somewhat. I think this is some legal issues involved in here as to what regulations and what jurisdiction people have. I tell you, one of the things that I wish would have been here would have been some of the experts who helped bring up, why we need this.
I agree with you
'Cause
wholeheartedly.
this
We
is
found
kind of
out
like
yesterday afternoon.
This is hearing hearsay.
Yeah, absolutely. We found out yesterday afternoon about this hearing, and we started making calls to Dr. Sy, to Ms. Martins and others, and nobody was available. You do have in your packets reports from them that I think you'll find instructive if you read them and supportive of the rule.
And right now, so what it's like I'm curious to know how much they're actually drawing out of the aquifer each day.
We are too.
So right now, and that's what the Groundwater Commission is charged with.
Yes, sir.
Is
It
to
is.
regulate it. Now, is there any reason why y'all didn't go to them and ask them to provide us this real-time data if they had it? Was that request ever made?
They've never had that capability to do that. Their meters don't report real time, and they've got meters, multiple meters that feed into one header, so you don't know exactly how much is coming out of that pipe that's going to that depth or coming out of that pipe to another depth. It's all flowing under one header, or that's the way it has been. They may have changed that in the last
You mean
month.
it's all going through?
Yes, it's coming up to one
pipe.
Multiple pipes into one header where there's one meter. And so you can't tell how much is coming out of that particular strata.
They
on
may
any
be
given day.
combining stratas
That's
to
right.
draw water
Turn
from.
down this flow, they may have to turn up that flow. But that's what we got to know. Individual wells at individual depths, and according to Dr. Saya, on an hourly basis per day.
Now, why do we need an hourly basis?
I have no idea. But Dr. Sy thinks that's important.
Okay. What stratas, or do you know which stratas are suitable for drinking water?
I've got an idea, but I'd rather dish that to Gary. He could answer that question.
But right now, the commission, does the commission have the ability to require them to provide y'all real-time data
We believe we do.
with their own wells?
We can't make them do something with their equipment that their equipment is not capable of doing.
Can you require them to make them have that equipment to do what you need to get the information from?
Probably.
Was that an option that y'all thought about doing?
As I understand it, and I wasn't around during those decision makings, they wanted uniformity. They wanted what they believe would be the best, less intrusive metering system and a monitoring system. It's been suggested that all these meters and monitoring boards have to have solar panels and concrete pads. They don't. If the owner is willing to provide power to our system. The problem is that a lot of these wells are remote and we can't do that. Some of the owners didn't want to do that. That's their choice. We know that by providing the power ourselves, that power is constant, and if it's tampered with, it's our problem, it's not theirs.
All right, that's all I have.
Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Lambert. Mr. Kern, could you come up? I just got a follow-up question, and it's just, we've heard two different things today on what y'all are capable for, and I'd like you under oath again to kind of just go over this, that what we just heard. Are y'all not capable of doing that?
Oh, we were not capable of doing that. What we were capable of doing was reporting in accordance with the rules the commission had in place. We did not meter our wells individually. The rules specifically allowed us to report production exactly the way we've been doing it. We've broken no rules. There are basically three ways you can report how much water is used. You can meter it, you can use run times, and there's another way to estimate. We basically did a combination of the two. We had the meter, as Mr. Foster said, on a manifold that took several wells. But what we kept track of was exactly how many hours each well ran. Twice a year, we tested our wells to see how much water they produce at a given pressure. And then one of our folks calculated how much water went to each well, perfectly in accordance with their rules. What I've learned through this process is that that wasn't adequate. The rules needed to be changed, and they're changing them. We've installed equipment that can comply with this. Exxon has equipment because they've replaced their meters over time. So it's not that we were hiding anything or trying to report faulty information. We were reporting the best information we had. And we have dedicated people that do this. Calling my company less than truthful is calling individuals who work for me less than truthful. It's absolutely not okay. I'm not a liar. I have never been. I served this country for 10 years. I was a special operations aviator. I was trusted with our best and brightest as a pilot. I don't have any reason to lie, and I have not. Our company has not. I won't tolerate anyone in my company who would do that. So the fact that they brought in a metering expert to prove that our reports were not completely accurate doesn't surprise me at all. They were accurate to the level that the commission required, period.
Senator Lambert.
And I guess that's where I'm sitting here looking at this, and I think everybody agrees we need better data. But basically, you were reporting what they asked you.
Yes, sir.
When these rules were proposed, did y'all go and meet with the commission and say, all right, did they tell you this is what we need? Did y'all say we're not going to provide this, or?
Sir, Mr. Beard and I had a couple of short conversations over coffee at Frank's on Airline, and or one there and one another place. And from the moment we started the conversation, he told me that he did not trust us and that there was nothing that we could do to overcome that.
Is there a way to give them real-time information that
Yes, sir.
cannot be altered?
They can come at any time.
I know,
walk
but I
in-
mean, not at any time. Can they have access somehow to the flows to know what's going on?
Yes, sir, they can. Now, could we put some kind of magic filter in there and lie to them over time? Yes, we could, but they could come out to our site and compare and see that we were not giving them the accurate data, because we have totalizers on our wells. Gary used the word totalizer earlier. In the past, we didn't have totalizers. Our meters were what are called differential pressure meters, and they drove a little chart recorder with a pen on it. They didn't have totalizers per se. Some of them do, many of them didn't. But the new meters are a meter with a number that gets bigger every time a gallon of water flows through it. And we will not reset those meters. They can inspect them anytime. Anytime. And again, we agree that metering is important. My whole problem is, and I'm just going to I'll lay it out for you. This is an absolute waste. Why do I care? Because I pay taxes in this. I personally care about this. This is not okay. It's a waste.
And I don't know if I buy that argument as much because, they've got the money to put the meters on there. The question is, how do we get the best information? And because y'all are paying the fee.
They're not, they don't have the money. They have a fee that will cover the cost going forward. They're going to continue to charge this $65, and whatever it grows to in the future, it grows to. There are no limits on how much the commission can charge. And so if they have a good idea, they can charge more money to do
the other
it.
thing, they're tasked with saving this aquifer. And I mean, I can see, I'm concerned about it because I think we need to have regulations in place that, save the aquifer, and hopefully that's what the $65 fee is going to be used for, and it's in the best interest.
Yes, sir. I'd love to see what the aquifer is in peril. The aquifer is in peril. I do need to correct something that Mr. Foster said. I did not say in my deposition we're going to the river. I said the last place we'll go is to the river. You talked about water in aquifers in the Southern Hill that's not usable for drinking. There's lots of it.
That's what I
okay?
thought there was.
We're going to take water out of those aquifers we've bypassed in the past, and we will treat it for the manganese that it contains, and we'll treat it for the iron it contains, and we'll treat it for the hardness, just like they do in most communities that use groundwater. We're incredibly blessed in Baton Rouge to have pristine aquifers. But the next step, and it might be sooner than anyone wants to think, will be to take water out of a sand that we bypassed because it has manganese and use it. And we will do that with the Public Service Commission's blessing, with full foreknowledge of the Groundwater Commission. We're going to try and take some stress off the aquifer system. It's time for us to do that. And we are learning through this process. And so I think we're already looking at it. But the river is not an option. Although, and I'll say this too, this should be the last place on the earth that runs out of good drinking water. Texas is dealing with salinity in their groundwater, brackish water. They're going to figure out how to treat it before this becomes a crisis in Baton Rouge, and we will get full advantage of that. That's why I'm so concerned about us making decisions about something that will impact us in 2070. Or 2049.
Right. Y'all have no control over, or y'all don't supply water to Exxon, do you?
No, sir, we don't. We don't. We've been told, why don't we move outside the district to get water? Why don't we move north to get water? Water's really hard. It's expensive to move. It weighs 8.34 pounds a gallon, and it's hard to move it, which is why we're not moving water out of Toledo Bend to Houston. Although they keep talking about it, we're not doing it because it's so daggum expensive to do it. So we're going to solve this problem locally. My job is to make sure when you turn on a tap or a fireman opens a hose, there's water there, and we're never going to fail at that mission. As Mr. First said, our rates are among the cheapest in the state, the lowest in the state. It's because we don't waste money. Mr. Foster is absolutely right. The meters we just installed will be in our rate base, and we will recover on that investment. It's a legitimate investment. What we don't do is gold plate our system or invest in things we don't need to invest in, which is why we didn't invest in meters before. We knew we were meeting the requirements. We thought we were adequately using the data we had. We've learned that we can do better because we needed to modernize. So yes, that $1 million, Murphy, will be in our next rate case. Absolutely. He's correct. And so will every other investment I've made in the last year. The new tank we built in Central is in our utility plant. The things we're doing in Ascension Parish is in our utility plant. The mains that we extend go in our utility plant. Everything we do. And the commission vets what we do to make sure it's used and useful. If I wanted to put in gold-plated pipes, the commission would say, we'll pay for plastic. And that's exactly what they should do.
That's all I have.
Sure.
Thank you, Senator Lambert. Nothing, Senator Kleinpeter. Thank you so much for coming back up, Mr. Kerr. Mr. Beard, you can come back up to close if you want. We don't debate during closure, just make your case again, and then we'll see.
Thank you, Senator. Gentlemen, thank you for your time. I appreciate it. Senator Lambert, you're correct. Our district, as executive director, we are tasked with preserving and protecting this aquifer. That's our job, and we take it very seriously. The board that we have, which you as the Senate confirms, comes from all walks of life. It includes industry, it includes municipal governments, it includes everybody. When we started this process, Mr. Kerr's right, the meters they had were totally inadequate. Because of that, and because we want to treat everybody the same, nobody's any different. We treat everybody the same, and we don't want the small guy to get tagged with anything. We play everything straight on top of the table, and everybody's equal. Exxon has come, and they're helpful. They don't have all meters on all their wells. They lack two. Two of their wells don't have any meters. They measure effluent not coming out of the well in 2 cases. So we're correcting all that. We're getting it right. But when we get the data that the Water Institute of the Gulf and LSU and the experts have told us that we have to do, we will have a model that we can depend on, that will give us accurate data, and we will preserve and protect this aquifer. That's our job. That's our assignment, and we take it seriously. This set of rules that you got right now is only for the purpose that you read before you. The rule already says that we have that authority to meter. It's already in there. All we're doing is clarifying that part of it. So if that rule is struck down, if this rule was struck down, it still says it in there. It still says we move forward and we keep metering. We're just trying to eliminate the users from having to put a second set of meters. That's all.
Mr. Kleinpeter, Senator Kleinpeter.
Yes, Mr. Beard, I think we can all agree that water is very important and to preserve it for years to come. I have a few questions. Do we have a reporting system? And then what happens if someone does not report? Is there a fine?
There's a procedure now in the books, on the books of law, where it's $1,000 per day per incident. So if somebody violates the law, then we turn that over to the Attorney General's office, and they're subject to fines at that level. That's correct.
Has anyone been fined?
To this date, nobody's been fined. People have been put on notice, but nobody's been fined, to my knowledge. Not
So
since
for
I've
the
been.
most part, everyone is reporting like they should?
According to the old rule before this went into effect, not the one you're today, the one from last year, yes.
Okay.
They tried, but when they failed, we put them on notice, and then they said, just put your meters on to make it accurate, and that was sufficient for us. We're not trying to find anybody. We just want the data.
No, I think all of us want the data. My question on that is, if there's a meter that's been working or a new meter that's been installed in one of these industries, and we go in and we install this ultrasonic meter,
Yes, sir.
and there's a discrepancy between the two of them. One thing that I do not like is that the third party has to come in and the owner has to incur the costs.
Yeah.
I don't like
That's
that.
already, I'm not disagreeing with you. That's in the old rule. It's
Okay.
already in there. That's not the new rule that's before you. Perhaps what we should do, Senator, is go back and relook at that, and I'd be happy to do that.
Okay. Did we get expert advice on the type of meters that we need to purchase?
Yes, sir. I did.
From who?
We had engineers come before us, along with Dr. Zai and the Water Institute of the Gulf.
Is there a report on that?
Yes, sir, there is.
Okay. And did we get multiple bids for those meters?
We have a service contract. We have a service contract with SP. SP went out and had a public bid on the installation of meters.
The installation or the actual meter?
Acquisition and installation of meters, they took public bids.
Okay. All right, no further questions.
Senator Lambert?
Mr. Beard, let me ask you this, because it seems like, I don't know where the breakdown is here. I think everybody we need to have certain information. Did y'all ever propose in your rule or come up with, we need this information and mandate that they put meters to do that? And if they couldn't do the meter, or give them the option that you put your meter on? Because I can see the problem with some people not being able, depending upon the wells you're regulating, the cost. I mean, is that an option?
Originally, if I recall, when we the board first started looking at the various options in front of them, was that based on what our field investigation showed, including Baton Rouge Water and everybody, some of the meters were so old and so inadequate that they weren't sufficient to provide us the data that we've been told. If we had told everybody, okay, everybody across the board, all 300 meters, 74 inches, here's the meter you have to have, X, go put it in, everybody. Well, that's great, because some guys have a small number of wells and lots of capacity coming out of it, like industry. Others, like the little church and small communities, they would be burdened with that cost, and we didn't want to do that.
But couldn't you have said?
We could have.
You're going to supply the meter for those people who didn't have the capability?
That's what we are doing.
But you're doing it for everybody.
I treat everybody the same. Yeah, everybody's the same. We put the meter in for everybody, irrespective of the type of meter that you have. And it's to the point where we know exactly the data coming in, and there's no question the data is right. None.
Okay, but now let's just say Baton Rouge Water. And I'm going to just use them as an example. Let's say that
Was
they've
that the 3-year-old or the 5-year-old?
No,
Okay.
I'm the grandparent now trying to figure it out.
Okay.
Couldn't you have put regulations or rules in place that said that you have to supply this information. And you could have dictated, you have the authority to mandate what they have to give you, correct?
Yes, sir. It could have been done 2 years ago when this first started.
Okay.
Yes,
And that's, when did y'all start these rules to promulgating them?
That was back in 2021.
Okay. Was that ever an option or a thought process? Because that, and you didn't do that,
Right.
and the reason was you wanted to treat everybody the same.
A, I want to treat everybody the same. B,
But by
in the
treating
case-
everybody
but in
the
case-
same, you're buying more meters, because some people could have provided this information to you without having to put your meter on it, correct?
Baton Rouge Water could not. Exxon could not because they didn't have meters and everything.
But you could have mandated to make them do it.
Yes, but if I mandated them to do it, right? In other words, I could have said, here's the meter we need, right?
Or
go
this
put-
is what I need from you, you need to give it to me.
Yeah, go put it in.
Okay.
But remember, the law says I can't charge anybody any different than anybody else. So if I go to somebody and say, okay, you absorb the cost, I have to do that. I have to charge the same thing to everybody by law. That's the way it's written. I can't charge municipal government different than industry.
For the metering.
For anything. I can't charge anybody. So our fee is only based on millions of gallons or on per million gallons of water. It's $65 per million gallons of water. That's the same to everybody. I can't change the rate because he got a meter, he didn't get a meter, or he wanted his own meter or whatever. I can't do that. So everybody has to charge the same fee. And this fee, just so you know, is not just for the meters. It is for the complete operation of the district. It is not just the meters.
Well, I agree with that. I think
Okay.
that's the operation. It's not the meters. You're just using that money to purchase
For
the
the
meters.
monitoring wells, for our match on your capital outlay, for everything. That's correct.
All right.
Thank you, Mr. Pepper. With
Thanks, sir.
no other questions of the committee, was there a will of the committee? Senator Lambert?
Mr. Chairman, I'm not sure on how this thing really plays out, some of the issues. What are our options on this?
I mean, we could ask Mr. McLeod to give us the legal options that we have today. Mr. McLeod?
Yes, Mr. Chairman and members. The committee is, doing oversight over these rules. On each one of these, the statute lays out, there's some questions we're supposed to contemplate while we're doing this. And let me find the exact. I was just reading it. But, before I get to it, I'm summarizing it. That is, we look on whether they have the authority to do it under the statute and things of that nature. There's about 4 of them, and the last one is whether the rule is advisable or not. So then if you determine that it's not advisable, then you can determine that it is an unacceptable rule. And there's 2 rules. You can not move on one rule and it would come into effect, and you could shoot down the other rule, find it as unacceptable. And if it was a long rule, we could go out and separate out, we don't like this part, and find that part unacceptable.
So Tyler, there's like 2 hurdles. First, we say, do they have the authority to do it? And the second one is it an acceptable rule? Is it necessary?
Right,
That
if
what we're
it's
looking at.
advisable.
If it's
right.
advisable.
And usually, in my experience, most committees just hop down to whether it's an advisable rule. Usually, nobody's going to get this far and not have the authority to do it. That would have usually been found already. It's just whether it's, basically a good idea, advisable.
And of course, I assume all of this is going to wind up in court anyway. at least unless we undo the rules.
Right, if we undo the rules, it goes up to the governor has, he can overrule us within 10 days.
Okay. I ain't doing anything. I'm gonna leave the rules like they are.
Go ahead, Mr. McLeod.
You make the following determinations. Whether the rule change or action on fees is in conformity or intent with the scope of the enabling legislation. Whether the rule change on the fees is in conformity or not conformity with the applicable provisions of law and the Constitution. The advisability and relative merit of the rule change or action on fees. Whether the rule change or action on fees is acceptable or unacceptable to the Oversight Committee.
I guess when I'm looking at these rules, we got the Rule 707, measuring the yield. The commission is authorized to monitor by installing or causing to be installed on each well in the district system and acknowledged to allow for remote, which doesn't allow the well owner to install their own or causing to be installed. So technically, under this rule, if I'm Baton Rouge Water and I have installed whatever it is necessary to give them the information they have, then you would not have to use their meter. Is that correct? Or is that going to be a legal question?
Because I believe what we have before us is it's not overstruck and underlined. Some of this
Is all new language.
I think some of this is current language, isn't it? And we don't have the underlined and struck out version.
I'm looking at
I didn't see another one.
I'm looking at 707, which is in my packet. Is this?
This A is new.
So they. Does that mean, to me, that means. Causing to be installed. That means if I put my own stuff on there, you can't.
Oh, thank you.
Is that right? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
I mean, if Baton Rouge Water wants to put their own monitoring system and they comply with it, it seems to be their option. Yeah.
Oh.
The words mean what they say.
Right, it does. Let's see, the committee is authorized to enter into the law. They can go ahead and put their own meter in.
If they want to, or you can cause to be installed.
Yeah. But then that gives the authority either way.
Well, they gotta have the authority to monitor it no matter what.
Yes.
Do they even have the authority, or is it
That's a legal issue between them, but I mean.
It's a tough spot.
I ain't doing anything.
The existing law we struck on page 2.
This is too important. I ain't voting. I mean, the commission needs to regulate this.
Yeah.
That's it. Yeah.
So that's what we do?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing.
Senator Lambert, you still have the mic.
I think I see, my interpretation of these rules, and of course, I guess I think we're going to be wound up in court is the commission is authorized to monitor, comma, by installing or causing to be installed. And the way I look at this, if Baton Rouge Water has the appropriate monitoring and can provide the information, I don't know if we need to do anything.
So
I don't know if they can, that seems to be providing the information they need. I don't know if the commission can install their own meter. I think that's going to be a legal question.
So you're saying since Baton Rouge Water Works can provide their information, they have the equipment
If
to...
the commission says we need this information and they can provide it under this regulation, it would seem to be they have the option to do what they want to do.
To do what Baton Rouge
Yeah.
Water Works wants to do.
If they can provide the information. And then, of course, it's up to the Capital Area Groundwater Conservation Commission to make sure it's verified, and they have the right to require it to be verified.
Okay. Well, I thank everyone for coming today. This was an informational hearing for us and oversight. We're just going to take no action today, and I thank the committee for showing up today and filling this thing out. I don't see any other before the committee today, so I ask for a motion to adjourn. Senator Faces makes a motion to adjourn. We adjourn.
Well, that's what it says.
Just don't go forcing it to say it.
Good to see you.
Can you, where does this leave y'all? Like, are y'all gonna come back and do something, or?
I don't see any reason, because I think it's going to wind up in court. And what you're looking at, they have the right to get the information. And you either install the meter, or they install it for you.
Yeah. So you guys, this is really just your oversight of their proposed rules?
Yes.
Kind of we're all over the map.
Well, it's trying to get, the problem was the rules were inadequate. They should have been requiring this years ago. And now is how do you implement to get the information? I would have preferred to have the guy here telling me, why you need this. But I mean, unfortunately.
He told me that as well, twice.
I would think that the reason, and that's why I
I
want
can
to.
tell you what he told me.
What's
The
that?
reason he says you need hourly data.
It's 'cause
He
it's gonna
doesn't
draw
need
the
it every
volume.
hour, he just needs a collection of hourly data. Because they need the data density in the model to make the extrapolations they need to make on the projection. You have to have that